When a billionaire investor decided to destroy a single father in front of a room full of millionaires, she had no idea he was a man who'd once fought for championships and walked away from violence to raise his daughter alone. Tonight, she's about to learn that some men can't be broken, no matter how much power you think money gives you. If you want to see how a waiter with nothing left to lose teaches a ruthless millionaire the hardest lesson of her life, stay until the end of this story. And if you're enjoying it, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels across the world. The Azure wasn't just a restaurant. It was a declaration of wealth, a temple where the rich came to worship their own success while the rest of the world pressed their noses against the glass. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings like frozen waterfalls, each one worth more than most people earned in a year. The marble floors gleamed so brightly they reflected the carefully curated smiles of servers who knew their place in this carefully orchestrated hierarchy of privilege. Evan Brooks moved through this world like a ghost, visible only when needed, invisible when convenient. His black vest and crisp white shirt were immaculate. They had to be. At the Azure, a wrinkled collar could cost you your job, and Evan couldn't afford to lose this one. Not with Lily's medical bills stacking up like accusations on his kitchen counter, each one a reminder that being a good father sometimes meant swallowing pride until it felt like drowning. He'd been at the Azure for 8 months now, long enough to learn the unspoken rules. Don't make eye contact unless addressed. Don't offer opinions. Don't breathe too loudly near the guests who paid $1,000 for wine that probably tasted like every other overpriced bottle in the cellar. Most importantly, don't ever forget that you were replaceable. Tonight felt different, though. Evan had learned to read the subtle shifts in atmosphere the way meteorologists read weather patterns, the way Marcus, the floor manager, kept checking his watch, the way the sommelier polished already pristine glasses with unusual intensity, the way the hostess kept glancing toward the private dining room like she was waiting for a storm to arrive. Brooks. Marcus appeared at Evan's elbow, his voice low and urgent. Private dining room in 10 minutes. VIP reservation. Evan nodded, already running through his mental checklist. Table for how many? 6, but only one person matters. Marcus's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping beneath his carefully maintained composure. Camilla Voss. The name meant nothing to Evan, but the way Marcus said it, like he was announcing an incoming missile, told him everything he needed to know. I need you perfect tonight, Brooks. Marcus stepped closer, and Evan caught the faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with anxiety sweat. This woman, she's connected. She's powerful. And she's looking for reasons to destroy people. Understood. No, I don't think you do. Marcus's hand gripped Evan's shoulder, fingers pressing hard enough to wrinkle the fabric. Last month she got a server at Luminescence fired because his tie was crooked. 2 weeks ago, she had a sommelier at the Pinnacle blacklisted from every high-end establishment in the city because he suggested a wine pairing she didn't ask for. She doesn't just complain, she annihilates careers for sport. Evan felt something cold settle in his chest, but he kept his face neutral. I'll be careful. Careful isn't enough. You need to be invisible. Anticipate everything. Read her mind before she knows what she wants. Marcus released his grip, smoothing down the wrinkles he'd created. Your daughter, Lily, right? The one with the medical issues? The mention of his daughter made Evan's spine stiffen. What about her? I'm just saying that your insurance through us is probably keeping those bills manageable. Be smart tonight. Don't give Voss any ammunition. Marcus walked away before Evan could respond, leaving him standing in the corridor between the kitchen and the dining room, caught between two worlds he didn't fully belong to. Evan checked his reflection in one of the mirrored panels. At 34, he looked older than his years, the kind of weathering that came from too many sleepless nights and too many choices between paying for groceries or paying for medicine. His dark hair was starting to show gray at the temples. His hands, scarred and calloused in ways that didn't quite match his current profession, told stories he never shared with anyone at the Azure. He thought about Lily, probably already asleep on the couch at their apartment, her small body rising and falling with the slightly labored breathing that never quite went away, even with the expensive medications. She'd asked him that morning if they could go to the park this weekend, her 7-year-old eyes bright with hope that he'd hated to dim with maybes and will sees. This weekend, baby girl, he'd promised, kissing her forehead before Mrs. Chen from next door arrived to watch her. I promise. Promises were easy to make. Keeping them required money, and money required this job. And this job required surviving the next few hours with a woman who apparently collected ruined lives the way other people collected art. The private dining room was a masterpiece of understated excess. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, a glittering maze of lights and ambition. The table was set for 6 with china so delicate it looked like it might shatter if you breathed on it wrong. Each piece of silverware had been positioned with mathematical precision, each crystal glass aligned perfectly with the edge of the plate. Evan did his final checks, adjusting a napkin that didn't need adjusting, confirming the water was precisely room temperature, making sure the lighting was set to the exact level specified in the reservation notes. He was smoothing an already perfect tablecloth when he heard the click of expensive heels on marble. Camilla Voss entered the room like she owned it, which, given her net worth, she probably could have if she'd wanted to. She was in her early 40s, beautiful in the way that required a team of professionals and a substantial budget. Her dress was a deep crimson that probably cost more than 3 months of Evan's rent, cut to accentuate a figure maintained by personal trainers and private chefs. Diamonds glittered at her throat and wrists, catching the light with every movement. But it was her eyes that Evan noticed most. Cold, calculating, searching for weakness the way a predator scans for the slowest member of the herd. Ms. Voss. Marcus appeared with his most obsequious smile, the one he reserved for guests who could end his career with a phone call. Welcome back to the Azure. It's always a pleasure. We'll see about that. Her voice was cultured, educated, sharp as the knife she probably kept metaphorically planted between someone's shoulder blades. She barely glanced at Marcus, her attention already sweeping the room, cataloging every detail like a general surveying a battlefield. Her companions filed in behind her, 3 men in expensive suits and 2 women who wore their wealth like armor. They were all smiling, but Evan recognized the particular tension of people who knew they were about to watch a performance and weren't sure if they'd be part of the show. Your server tonight will be Evan Brooks, one of our finest. Marcus gestured toward Evan, who stepped forward with a polite smile. Ms. Voss, welcome to the Azure. Evan's voice was steady, professional, betraying none of the warning bells clanging in his head. I'll be taking care of your table this evening. Camilla's eyes fixed on him, and Evan felt the weight of her scrutiny like a physical pressure. She was looking for something, a flaw, a weakness, an opening. We'll see about that too. She settled into her seat, arranging herself with the precision of someone who knew exactly how she looked from every angle. Bring me your wine list, and don't bother with recommendations. I know more about wine than anyone working in this establishment. Of course, ma'am. Evan retrieved the leather-bound wine list, presenting it with exactly the right amount of deference. Not too submissive, that would read as weakness. Not too casual, that would be disrespect. The perfect balance of professional courtesy that high-end service required. He stepped back, waiting while Camilla made a show of examining the list, her perfectly manicured finger trailing down the pages. Her companions made small talk about market trends and investment opportunities, but Evan could feel the undercurrent of anticipation. They knew something was coming. This is disappointing. Camilla closed the wine list with a sharp snap. Your selection is pedestrian at best. Marcus materialized at Evan's shoulder, his smile never wavering despite the insult. I apologize if our collection doesn't meet your standards, Ms. Voss. We have several rare vintages that aren't listed. Perhaps I could have our sommelier. I don't want your sommelier's opinion. I want the 1996 Chateau Margaux. I assume you have it, despite the inadequacy of your published selection? Of course. Marcus's relief was palpable. Excellent choice. Brooks will retrieve it immediately. Evan headed to the wine cellar, his mind already calculating the cost of the bottle Camilla had ordered. $12,000 for 1 bottle of wine. Enough to cover Lily's medications for 3 months. Enough to finally get ahead on the rent. Enough to stop choosing between electricity and groceries. He pushed the thoughts away. That kind of thinking was dangerous. It led to resentment, and resentment showed on your face, and showing anything on your face was a luxury he couldn't afford. The sommelier helped him select the bottle, handling it with the reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. She's testing you, he murmured as he wiped the already clean bottle. Voss always starts with the wine. It's her opening move. What's the end game? Depends on her mood. Sometimes she just wants to feel powerful. Sometimes... He trailed off, shaking his head. Just be perfect, Brooks. Be so perfect she can't find a crack. Evan returned to the private dining room carrying the bottle like it was nitroglycerin. He presented it to Camilla, label facing outward, waiting for her approval. She examined it with narrowed eyes, turning the bottle in the light, checking the label, the seal, the level of wine inside. Evan knew the bottle was perfect. The sommelier had confirmed it, but Camilla wasn't looking for perfection. She was looking for ammunition. The temperature is wrong. Evan kept his expression neutral. The wine is stored at 55 degrees, ma'am, which is the optimal temperature for... I didn't ask for a lecture on wine storage. I said the temperature is wrong. Her voice cut across his explanation like a blade. It should be 53 degrees for a vintage of this caliber. Bring me a proper bottle. Marcus stepped in smoothly. Of course, Ms. Voss. We'll have another bottle brought up immediately and ensure it's at precisely the temperature you prefer. The second bottle arrived 10 minutes later. Evan presented it, confirmed the temperature with a thermometer Camilla insisted on seeing, and finally received permission to open it. He performed the ritual with practiced precision, cutting the foil, extracting the cork with a smooth pull that made no sound, wiping the rim, pouring exactly 2 ounces into Camilla's glass for tasting. She swirled it, studied the color against the white tablecloth, sniffed it with the concentration of a chemist analyzing a compound. Then she sipped, held it in her mouth, and finally swallowed. Acceptable. She waved her hand in dismissal. Pour for the table. Evan moved around the table, filling each glass with exactly 4 ounces, enough to appreciate the wine, not so much that it would warm before being consumed. He was finishing the last pour when Camilla spoke again. Your hands are shaking. They weren't. Evan knew they weren't. But he looked down anyway, and in that moment of distraction, Camilla shifted her glass slightly. Not much. Just enough that when Evan finished pouring and moved to the next guest, a single drop of wine fell from the bottle onto the white tablecloth. The room went silent. You're careless. Camilla's voice was soft, almost gentle, which made it more dangerous. A $12,000 bottle of wine, and you can't even pour it without making a mess. I apologize, Ms. Voss. Let me get you a fresh tablecloth immediately. You think a fresh tablecloth fixes your incompetence? She leaned back in her chair, and Evan saw it clearly now, the predatory gleam in her eyes, the slight smile playing at her lips. This was what she'd come for. Not the food, not the wine, not the company. This. The hunt. The kill. Tell me something. What kind of server can't perform basic tasks without destroying restaurant property? Camilla, perhaps we should... One of her companions started, but she silenced him with a look. I'm speaking to the help. She turned back to Evan, her smile widening. What's your name again? Evan Brooks, ma'am. Evan Brooks. And how long have you been failing at this job? Evan Brooks? Marcus appeared, his voice soothing. Ms. Voss, I assure you that Mr. Brooks is one of our most experienced servers. This is highly unusual. I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to him. She pointed at Evan like he was an exhibit in a museum. Answer the question. How long have you been incompetent? Evan felt the familiar weight settling onto his shoulders. The same weight he'd felt in other rooms, other situations, when powerful people decided they wanted to see what it took to break him. He thought about Lily, about her inhaler that cost $400 a month, about the insurance card in his wallet that was only valid as long as he kept this job. I've been with the Azure for 8 months, ma'am. I apologize for the spill. It won't happen again. You're right, it won't, because I'm going to make sure you never work in a quality establishment again. She picked up her glass, examining it in the light. This glass has a smudge on it. Did you check these before we arrived? Evan had. He knew he had, but he also knew it didn't matter. I'll bring you a fresh glass immediately. Don't bother, I've lost my appetite. She pushed away from the table, and her companions exchanged glances that mixed relief with disappointment. The show was ending early. The service here has deteriorated significantly since my last visit. Marcus, I'll be speaking to your owner about tonight's disaster. Please, Ms. Voss. Marcus's carefully maintained composure was cracking. Let us make this right. Whatever you need, What I need is staff who can perform basic tasks without supervision. She stood, smoothing her dress. But clearly that's too much to ask from a place that hires people like him. She was walking toward the door when one of her companions, a younger man with the eager eyes of someone trying to impress her, spoke up. "Camilla, you should tell them about the real problem." She paused, turning back with that predatory smile. "You're right, Derek. I should." She fixed her gaze on Evan, and he saw the shift in her expression the moment when she decided to stop playing with her food and go for the kill. "I did some research on the Azure staff after my last visit. Quality control, you understand. And I found something interesting about you, Evan Brooks." The room seemed to contract, all the air sucking toward Camilla like she was a black hole consuming everything around her. "You have a daughter, don't you? 7 years old. Chronic health issues, expensive medications. Single father, struggling to make ends meet." She took a step closer, her heels clicking on the marble like a countdown. "That's why you're here, isn't it? Desperate, willing to work for tips and hope it's enough to keep your little girl breathing." Evan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Marcus looked pale, frozen in place, clearly calculating whether intervening would make things better or worse. "That's what I thought." Camilla's voice dripped with satisfaction. "You know what's pathetic? A father who can't even provide basic health care for his child without begging for scraps in a restaurant. A man who has to smile and bow while better people eat, hoping his servitude might earn enough to buy 1 more month of medicine." "That's enough." The words came out of Evan's mouth before he could stop them, low and firm. Camilla's eyes lit up. "Excuse me?" "I said that's enough." Evan met her gaze directly, abandoning the careful deference he'd maintained. "You can insult my work, you can complain about the service, but my daughter is off limits." The room held its breath. Marcus looked like he might faint. The other guests had their phones out now, sensing that something significant was about to happen, not wanting to miss their chance to capture it. Camilla laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Off limits? You think you get to set limits with me? Do you have any idea who I am?" "Someone who thinks money gives them the right to humiliate strangers for entertainment." "You self-righteous—" She stepped closer, her face flushing with genuine anger now. The mask of icy control was slipping. "I could buy and sell you 1,000 times over. I could make one phone call and ensure you never work anywhere in this city again. I could destroy you with a text message." "Then do it." Evan stood perfectly still, his voice calm despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "Make your call, send your text, but my daughter's name doesn't belong in your mouth." For a moment, Evan thought she might actually back down. Her companions were murmuring warnings. Marcus was edging closer like he might physically intervene, and even Camilla seemed to recognize that she'd pushed into dangerous territory. But then Derek, the young man who'd encouraged her earlier, laughed. "Are you going to let the help talk to you like that?" It was the wrong thing to say. Evan saw the shift in Camilla's expression, the way her anger crystallized into something harder and more focused. She'd been playing a game, enjoying the power dynamic. Now it was personal. "You want to protect your daughter." Camilla's voice went soft again, which Evan had learned meant she was most dangerous. "Then maybe you should have made better choices. Maybe you should have gotten a real job instead of carrying plates for people who actually matter. Maybe you should have been a better man so your child wouldn't be suffering because of your failures." The words hit like physical blows, each one carefully aimed at the doubts that kept Evan awake at night. Every time Lily struggled to breathe, and he wondered if he should have stayed in his old life, his old career, despite the cost to his soul. Every time he chose between buying her the name brand inhaler or the generic that didn't work quite as well. Every time he saw her looking at other kids with both parents, stable homes, fathers who didn't come home smelling like other people's expensive dinners. "Camilla, this has gone far enough." One of the women at the table stood up, her voice firm. "This isn't appropriate." "Shut up, Rachel." Camilla didn't even look at her. She was focused entirely on Evan, circling him like a shark who'd scented blood. "I'm having a conversation with the incompetent server who thinks he can talk back to me. I think we should leave." Another man stood, reaching for his coat. "This isn't—" "No one is leaving." Camilla's voice cracked like a whip. "Sit down. All of you. I'm not finished." They hesitated, then slowly resumed their seats. Evan understood the power dynamic at play. These people needed Camilla more than she needed them. Investment opportunities, business connections, social capital. She held the cards, and they all knew it. Marcus finally found his voice. "Miss Voss, I must insist that we all take a moment to—" "You must insist?" Camilla turned on him, and Evan saw Marcus flinch. "You must insist on nothing. You're the manager of a restaurant, not the president of anything that matters. I'll leave when I'm ready to leave, and right now, I'm not ready." She turned back to Evan, and her next words came out in a stage whisper, loud enough for everyone to hear. "How much are those medications anyway? 400, 500 a month? I spend more than that on shoes I wear once." She paused, letting that sink in. "Your daughter is suffering because you're not good enough, not smart enough, not valuable enough. You're serving wine to people who matter while your own child can barely breathe. That's not my cruelty. That's just reality." Evan felt something shift inside him, a carefully constructed wall starting to crack. He'd spent 8 months bowing and scraping, swallowing insults, accepting his place in a hierarchy that valued money over humanity. He'd done it for Lily, telling himself that dignity was a luxury he couldn't afford. But hearing this woman, this stranger who knew nothing about him, nothing about the choices he'd made or the things he'd sacrificed, reduce his daughter's suffering to a punchline, reduce his love to inadequacy, reduce everything he was trying to do to simple failure. "You don't know anything about me." His voice was still controlled, but there was steel underneath now. "You don't know what I've done for my daughter. You don't know what I've given up. You don't know who I am." "I know you're a waiter who can't even pour wine correctly." Camilla smiled, triumphant. "I know you're a single father who's failing at the most basic requirement of parenthood, providing for your child. I know you're standing here in a borrowed vest, serving people who are worth more than you'll ever be, hoping for tips like a trained dog hoping for treats." The phones were all out now, recording from multiple angles. Evan could see the guests at other tables peering in through the open door, drawn by the raised voices and the magnetic pull of conflict. Marcus was saying something, but Evan couldn't hear him over the roaring in his ears. He thought about Lily, about the promise he'd made to himself the day she was born. That he would be better than his own father, better than the man who'd taught him that power came from fists and fear. That he would choose a different path, a gentler way, even if it meant eating dirt and swallowing pride and working jobs that paid barely enough to survive. He thought about the gym where he used to train, the ring where he'd learned that violence was easy, but walking away was the hardest fight of all. He thought about the moment 3 years ago when he'd hung up his gloves and walked out of that world forever, trading championships for night shifts, trading recognition for anonymity, trading everything he'd been for the chance to be the father Lily deserved. And he thought about this woman standing in front of him, surrounded by her wealth, and her cruelty, and her absolute certainty that money meant she could say whatever she wanted, do whatever she wanted, destroy whomever she wanted without consequences. "My daughter," Evan said quietly, "is the best thing that ever happened to me. Everything I do for her. Every shift, every smile, every humiliation I swallow, it's all for her. You think that makes me weak. You think that makes me pathetic. I don't think it." Camilla stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something floral and expensive and probably worth more than his weekly salary. "I know it." "Then you don't know what strength actually is." Something flickered in Camilla's eyes. Surprise maybe, or irritation that he was still talking back when he should have crumpled by now. She was used to breaking people quickly, efficiently. The fact that Evan was still standing, still speaking, seemed to offend her. "Strength?" She laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "You're a waiter. You're nothing. You're furniture that occasionally brings food. Don't confuse necessity with strength." "I'm done talking to you." Evan started to turn away, reaching for the professionalism that had protected him through countless difficult tables, countless impossible customers. He would finish his shift, he would collect his tips, he would go home to Lily. This would become just another story about surviving another night. But Camilla wasn't done. She grabbed his arm, spinning him back around, her face twisted with the kind of rage that came from not getting what she wanted fast enough. "You don't walk away from me. You don't dismiss me. I'm not finished with you." Her hand was still gripping his arm, her nails digging in hard enough to hurt. The room had gone completely silent now, everyone watching, everyone knowing they were witnessing something that had crossed a line but unable to look away. Evan looked down at her hand on his arm, then back up at her face. Let go. Or what? She tightened her grip, her voice rising. What are you going to do? Hit me? Is that what you're thinking? You want to hit a woman? Show everyone what kind of man you really are. I want you to let go of my arm. Make me. She was breathing hard now, her composure completely shattered, replaced by pure vindictive fury. Come on. Show everyone the violent thug hiding underneath the vest. Show your daughter's father for what he really is. Marcus was moving toward them, his hands raised in placation. Please, both of you, let's all just take a step back. Camilla released Evan's arm and shoved Marcus away with surprising force. Stay out of this. This is between me and the help. Then she turned back to Evan, and what happened next happened so fast that the phone's recording barely caught it. She swung at his face, her open palm arcing toward his cheek with all the force of her rage behind it. Evan's body reacted on pure instinct, muscle memory from 1,000 training sessions, 1,000 fights. His hand came up, smooth and effortless, catching her wrist mid-swing with the precision of someone who'd spent years learning to read attacks before they landed. The slap never connected. Camilla froze, staring at her wrist trapped in Evan's hand, her face a mask of shock and fury. How dare you! Evan released her wrist immediately, stepping back, raising both hands in a peaceful gesture. Don't. But Camilla was beyond reason now. She'd tried to hit him and failed, humiliated herself in front of her companions, and the only way to salvage the situation was to escalate. She lunged at him, shoving both hands against his chest, trying to knock him backward. Evan didn't move. He absorbed the shove, his feet planted, his center of gravity low and stable. Years of training had taught him how to take impact, how to stay balanced, how to remain calm when someone was trying to hurt you. Camilla hit him again and again, each shove more desperate than the last. Fight back! Defend yourself! Hit me! No. Evan's voice was calm, almost gentle. I'm not going to fight you. The phones captured everything, Camilla attacking, Evan standing motionless, absorbing every hit without retaliating. Her expensive dress was disheveled now, her perfectly styled hair coming loose, her makeup starting to run from sweat and exertion. She looked nothing like the composed billionaire who'd walked into the restaurant an hour ago. She kicked at him, her designer heel connecting with his shin hard enough to make him wince. Still, Evan didn't fight back. He just stood there, his hands at his sides, his expression calm, waiting for her fury to burn itself out. You coward! Camilla screamed, her voice raw. You pathetic coward! Hit me back! Ms. Voss, please! Rachel was on her feet now, trying to reach Camilla, but one of the men held her back. Call security, Marcus was saying into his phone, his voice shaking. We need security in the private dining room immediately. Camilla threw a wild punch, her fist aimed at Evan's face. This time, Evan caught it easily, not to hurt her, but to protect himself, redirecting the force away from his face with a smooth motion that looked like choreography. She tried to knee him. He sidestepped. She tried to shove him again. He stayed balanced. Every attack she threw, Evan neutralized with minimal movement, maximum efficiency. The kind of defensive technique that could only come from years of training and discipline. He never struck back, never escalated, just defended himself with the precise economy of motion that professional fighters learned after spending thousands of hours in the ring. And then finally, Camilla made a critical mistake. She charged at him, throwing her entire weight forward in a wild rush, trying to tackle him, hurt him, break him, anything to salvage her pride and her power. Evan simply stepped aside. Camilla, expecting resistance, finding none, stumbled forward, her momentum carrying her past where Evan had been standing. Her heel caught on the edge of the carpet. Her arms windmilled, grasping for balance that was already lost. She crashed to the marble floor with a sound that echoed through the suddenly silent room. For a long moment, nobody moved. Camilla lay sprawled on the pristine marble, her dress hiked up, her hair a mess, her carefully constructed image of power and control shattered as completely as if she'd been the one to hit the floor during a prize fight. Evan looked down at her, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to Marcus. I quit. Brooks, wait. But Evan was already untying his apron, folding it neatly, placing it on the nearest table. He walked toward the door, stepping carefully around Camilla, who was still on the floor making small whimpering sounds that might have been pain or humiliation, or both. "He attacked me!" Camilla's voice was shrill, desperate. "You all saw it! He pushed me! He assaulted me!" Rachel knelt beside her. "Camilla, stop. Everyone saw what happened. You attacked him. He never laid a hand on you." "She's right." Derek was staring at his phone at the video he'd recorded. "You went at him over and over. He didn't fight back. He just defended himself." "You're lying!" Camilla struggled to her feet, her face blotchy with rage and humiliation. "Give me that phone. Delete that video immediately." "I don't think so." Derek stepped back, holding his phone away from her grasping hands. Camilla, this is bad. This is really bad. We all saw you assault a server." "He provoked me." "By standing there?" Rachel shook her head. "By not hitting you back when you tried to hurt him? That's not provocation. That's restraint." Evan had reached the door when Marcus caught up to him. "Please, Brooks, don't leave like this. Let me fix this. There's nothing to fix." Evan's voice was tired but steady. "I should have walked away a long time ago. Your job, your insurance, your daughter's medications. I'll figure it out." Evan met Marcus's eyes. "I always do." He walked out of the Azure for the last time, leaving behind the crystal and marble and carefully curated luxury. He walked past the other servers who'd watched everything, past the guests who were already sharing videos on their phones, past the life he'd been trying to live. Outside, the night air was cold and clean, washing away the smell of expensive perfume and expensive wine and expensive cruelty. Evan pulled out his phone, checking the time. Almost midnight. Mrs. Chen would have put Lily to bed hours ago, probably left her asleep on the couch because moving her to bed sometimes triggered her asthma. He started walking toward home, his mind already calculating. He had maybe 2 months of savings if he stretched them, maybe 3 if he sold his car. Enough time to find something else, somewhere else, some other way to keep Lily safe and healthy and happy. The walk home took 40 minutes. He used the time to decompress, to let the adrenaline fade, to think about everything that had happened and everything it meant. By the time he climbed the stairs to his third-floor apartment, he felt hollowed out but strangely peaceful. Mrs. Chen opened the door before he could get his keys out. "Oh, good, you're home. Lily's been asleep for hours. She asked about you before bed, wanted to know if you'd still be taking her to the park tomorrow." "Tomorrow," Evan confirmed, the word feeling like an anchor. "I promised." Mrs. Chen studied his face with the frank assessment of someone who'd known him since he moved in 3 years ago. "Rough night?" "You could say that." "You need to talk about it?" "I need to see my daughter." Mrs. Chen nodded, gathering her things. "She's on the couch. Breathing was a little rough earlier, but I gave her the inhaler at 8 like you showed me. She settled right down." Evan paid her for the night, adding an extra 20 he couldn't really afford because Mrs. Chen never charged enough for the peace of mind she provided. After she left, he locked the door and walked quietly to the living room. Lily was curled up on the couch, exactly where Mrs. Chen had said she'd be. Her chest rose and fell with that slight wheeze that was both better than it used to be and worse than it should be. Her stuffed rabbit was clutched in one small hand. Her dark hair, so much like his own, spread across the pillow in tangled waves. Evan sat on the edge of the couch, careful not to wake her, and watched his daughter breathe. This was what mattered. Not the Azure, not Camilla Voss, not the job he'd just lost or the uncertain future that waited for them. Just this, just her. Just the promise that he would keep finding ways to be better, to do better, to give her the life she deserved. "Hey, baby girl," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Daddy's home." Lily stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy?" "Right here." She smiled, that sleepy 7-year-old smile that made everything else fade away. "Park tomorrow?" "Park tomorrow," he confirmed. "I promise." "'Kay." She yawned, already sinking back into sleep. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Lily, more than anything." She was asleep again within seconds, her breathing evening out, her small body relaxed in the safety of home. Evan sat with her for a long time, listening to her breathe, thinking about all the ways his life had just changed and all the ways it would stay exactly the same. He'd lost a job tonight. He'd walked away from steady income and reliable insurance and the illusion of stability. But he'd kept something more important, his dignity, his principles, his refusal to be broken by people who thought money made them gods. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, expecting maybe a text from Marcus asking him to reconsider, but instead found dozens of notifications. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, his name trending alongside video clips labeled with phrases like waiter defending himself, and billionaire attacks restaurant worker, and this is why we eat the rich. The videos from the private dining room had already gone viral. Evan watched one, seeing himself through the lens of strangers' phones, calm, controlled, absorbing Camilla's attacks without retaliating, stepping aside at the last moment and letting her momentum carry her to the floor. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive, angry on his behalf, calling Camilla every variation of terrible that the internet could imagine. One comment caught his eye. "Those moves, though. Guy moves like a fighter. Someone track him down." Evan turned off his phone and set it on the table. Whatever happened next would happen. Right now, he was home with his daughter, and tomorrow they were going to the park. And that was enough. He carefully lifted Lily from the couch, carrying her to her bedroom, tucking her into bed properly. She didn't wake up, just made a small, satisfied sound and burrowed deeper into her blankets. He placed her rabbit beside her, kissed her forehead, and stood watching her sleep for another long moment. Then he went to his own room, too tired to think about consequences or futures or the videos spreading across the internet like wildfire. He fell asleep thinking about the park, about Lily's laughter, about the promise he'd made and the promise he'd keep. Tomorrow would bring what it brought. Tonight, he'd chosen dignity over security, self-respect over survival, the man he wanted to be over the man the world wanted to make him. And in the morning, he would take his daughter to the park. The morning sun found Evan exactly where he'd promised to be, sitting on a bench at Riverside Park, while Lily chased pigeons with the boundless energy of a child who didn't know her father had just upended their lives. She laughed as the birds scattered, her small arms spread wide like wings, her breathing mercifully clear in the crisp morning air. Evan's phone had been buzzing non-stop since dawn. He'd turned off the notifications an hour ago, but he could still feel it vibrating in his pocket like a persistent insect, reminding him that the world beyond this park bench wanted something from him. He ignored it, focusing instead on Lily's joy, on the way she spun in circles until she got dizzy and collapsed in the grass, giggling. "Daddy, look!" She pointed at a particularly bold pigeon that had ventured close to her fallen position. "He's not scared of me." "That's because you're not very scary, baby girl." "I could be scary if I wanted to." She sat up, trying to make a fierce face that only made her look more adorable. "I could go roar and everything." "Terrifying," Evan agreed, smiling despite the knot of anxiety in his chest. He'd checked his bank account that morning. $1,800. Maybe enough for 2 months if nothing unexpected happened, which in his experience, something always did. A woman jogging past slowed down, staring at Evan with obvious recognition. She pulled out her phone, and Evan saw her fingers moving, probably texting someone or posting about seeing him. He turned his attention back to Lily, who had moved on from pigeons to examining a particularly interesting rock. "Mr. Brooks?" Evan looked up to find a young man in his 20s standing a respectful distance away, holding his phone awkwardly. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I just wanted to say what happened last night was incredible. That woman had no right to treat you like that, and the way you handled it was... Man, it was something else." "I appreciate that," Evan said carefully. "But I'm here with my daughter right now." Of course," the young man nodded vigorously. "I just wanted to say you're a hero, standing up to people like her, not letting them break you." He walked away before Evan could respond, leaving him sitting there wondering how he'd become a hero for simply refusing to hit someone. Lily came running back, clutching her rock like treasure. "Who was that, Daddy?" "Just someone being friendly." Evan pulled her onto his lap, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. "You having fun?" "The best fun." She held up her rock. "Can I keep this?" "Sure, baby. We'll put it on your shelf when we get home." They stayed at the park for another hour, Evan pushing Lily on the swings until his arms ached and his mind finally quieted enough to stop calculating disaster scenarios. When her breathing started to get slightly labored, he gave her a puff from her inhaler and suggested they head home for lunch. "Can we have grilled cheese?" Lily asked as they walked hand in hand down the sidewalk. "We can have anything you want." "Anything? Even ice cream for lunch?" "Nice try. Grilled cheese first, then maybe ice cream." They were halfway home when Evan's phone rang with an actual call instead of just notifications. He almost ignored it, but the number had a local area code and something made him answer. "Is this Evan Brooks?" The voice was male, professional, slightly tentative. "Who's asking?" "My name is Marcus Chen, no relation to your neighbor, I checked, and I'm a reporter with the Tribune. I'd like to talk to you about what happened at the Azure last night." "No comment." Evan started to hang up, but the reporter spoke quickly. "Wait, please. I'm not trying to sensationalize anything. I've been covering income inequality and labor rights for 5 years, and what happened to you is exactly the kind of story that needs to be told. The way Camilla Voss treated you, the power dynamic, the fact that you lost your job for defending yourself, it's important. I'm with my daughter." "I understand, but Mr. Brooks, that video has been viewed over 10 million times already. Camilla Voss is trending on every platform. People are digging into her business practices, her history of abusing service workers, her investment patterns. You started something, whether you meant to or not." Evan looked down at Lily, who was examining another rock she'd found on the sidewalk. "I didn't start anything. I just quit a job." "You did more than that. You showed people what dignity looks like. In a world where the rich think they can treat everyone else like servants, you stood there and took every hit without breaking. That matters. What do you want from me?" "An interview. On the record. Tell your side of the story. Let people know who Evan Brooks really is, not just the waiter in the video." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Think about it," Marcus Chen said. "My number's on your phone now. If you change your mind, call me anytime." After he hung up, Evan found 3 more voicemails from other reporters, 2 from numbers claiming to be talent agencies, and 1 from someone offering to be his lawyer if he wanted to sue Camilla Voss. He deleted them all and focused on getting Lily home safely. Their apartment building looked the same as it always did, slightly shabby but clean, the kind of place where working families made do and looked out for each other. Mrs. Chen was sweeping the front steps, and she looked up with concern when she saw them approaching. "Evan, dear, you have visitors. They've been waiting for about an hour." "Visitors?" Evan's hand instinctively tightened on Lily's. "Who?" "2 men. They said they were friends from your old gym. I told them to wait in the lobby." Mrs. Chen lowered her voice. "They seem nice enough, but I thought you should know before you go up." Evan's stomach clenched. His old gym. That meant people from his past, from the life he'd left behind when Lily was born. He hadn't been to Iron Mountain Gym in 3 years, hadn't talked to anyone from that world except for a few text messages that eventually stopped coming. "Can you watch Lily for a few minutes?" "Of course." Mrs. Chen held out her hand and Lily took it willingly. "Come on, sweet girl. Let's see if we can find some cookies while your daddy talks to his friends." Evan entered the lobby to find 2 men sitting on the worn couch near the mailboxes. He recognized them immediately, even though they looked older, more weathered. Tommy Rodriguez, who'd been a welterweight contender before a shoulder injury ended his career, and David Kim, who'd trained fighters at Iron Mountain for 20 years and could read a person's fighting style from the way they walked across a room. "Evan Brooks?" Tommy stood up, grinning. "Man, it's been too long." "What are you guys doing here?" Evan didn't move from the doorway, keeping his body language neutral. David stood more slowly, his sharp eyes taking in everything. Evan's stance, his tension, the way he'd positioned himself between them and the exit. "We saw the video." "Everyone saw the video. You know how many people called the gym this morning asking if that was really you?" "I don't fight anymore." "We know that." Tommy's smile faded into something more serious. "We've known that for 3 years, but Evan, the way you moved last night, the defensive technique, the balance, the control, you can't buy that in some weekend self-defense class. That's professional training. That's years of discipline." "So what?" "So people are asking questions." David crossed his arms, and Evan recognized the posture from hundreds of training sessions. The coach about to deliver hard truth. Questions about who you were before you became a waiter. Questions about why a guy with those skills is working for minimum wage and tips. Those aren't anyone's business. Maybe not. But Evan, do you know what people are saying about you online? They're calling you a hero. They're calling you an inspiration. Working class guy standing up to billionaire abuse. Single father doing whatever it takes for his kid. The whole world is watching you right now. I don't want the world watching me. Evan's voice hardened. I want to take care of my daughter and be left alone. Tommy and David exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, Tommy spoke. What if we could help with that? Taking care of your daughter. I don't need charity. Not charity. A job. David pulled out his phone, showing Evan a picture of Iron Mountain Gym. It looked different from how Evan remembered. Bigger, newer, with professional signage and what looked like an expanded facility. The gym's grown since you left. We've got contracts with 3 different promotions now. We're training Olympic hopefuls, and we just opened a youth program that's already oversubscribed. Good for you. We need trainers, Evan. Good ones. People who understand technique, who can teach discipline and control, who know what it means to fight and when it's better to walk away. David met his eyes directly. People like you. I told you, I don't fight anymore. We're not asking you to fight. We're asking you to teach. Pass on what you know to the next generation. Work normal hours, get proper benefits, have health insurance that actually covers your daughter's medications without you having to choose between prescriptions and groceries. The offer hung in the air between them, tempting and terrifying in equal measure. Evan thought about Lily's medical bills, about the dwindling balance in his bank account, about the dozens of job applications he'd have to submit starting tomorrow, with the knowledge that viral video guy who quit the Azure wasn't exactly a selling point on a resume. What's the catch? No catch. Tommy shrugged. You teach our fighters, share your knowledge, help us build something good. We pay you a fair wage with full benefits. You get to be home for dinner with your kid instead of working until midnight serving wine to people who treat you like furniture. And if I say no, then we wish you luck and leave you alone. David put his phone away. But Evan, I've been training fighters for 2 decades, and I've never seen anyone move the way you moved in that video. You've got something special, not just the skills, but the restraint, the discipline. That's rare. That's valuable. And right now you need money, and we need someone like you. Seems like maybe the universe is trying to tell you something. Evan wanted to say no. Every instinct told him that going back to that world, even as a trainer, was dangerous. It meant reconnecting with the person he used to be, the fighter who'd learned to solve problems with violence before learning there were better ways. It meant Lily seeing that side of him, the side he'd worked so hard to leave behind. But it also meant insurance. Stable income. The ability to afford her medications without choosing between generic and name brand, without calculating whether they could afford the emergency room if she had a bad attack. It meant not having to smile and bow and swallow humiliation from people who thought tipping 20% made them generous. I need to think about it. Fair enough? David pulled out a business card, handing it to Evan. This is my direct line. Call me when you decide. But Evan, don't take too long. The world's watching you right now, and opportunities like this don't usually wait around. After they left, Evan stood in the empty lobby holding the business card like it might explode. Iron Mountain Gym. He could picture it perfectly. The smell of sweat and leather, the sound of fists hitting bags, the particular energy of a place where people push themselves past their limits every single day. He could also picture himself there, teaching young fighters the things he'd learned. Not just how to throw a punch, but when not to. Not just how to win, but how to know which fights weren't worth having. Maybe that wouldn't be so bad. Maybe that would even be good. His phone buzzed again, and this time Evan checked it. The screen was flooded with notifications, Twitter mentions, Instagram tags, Facebook friend requests from people he'd never met. He scrolled through them with growing disbelief. Someone had identified him as Evan the Ghost Brooks, a middleweight who'd gone 23-2 in his professional career before vanishing from the sport 3 years ago. Old fight footage was circulating, Clips of him in the ring moving with the same fluid precision he'd shown last night defending himself from Camilla. The comments were a mix of admiration and curiosity. Where did he go? Why did he quit at his peak? That's the same guy who nearly won the championship before he disappeared. Look at how he moves. You don't lose that kind of training. Someone had dug up an old interview from right before he quit, where he'd mentioned becoming a father and needing to reevaluate his priorities. The replies to that were almost universally supportive. Man chose his kid over fame. That's real strength. Respect to this guy for putting family first. But there were other comments too, darker ones that made Evan's chest tighten. If he's such a great fighter, why's he working as a waiter? Must have screwed up pretty bad to fall that far. Probably has a drug problem or gambling debts. There's always a reason people crash like that. Evan closed the apps and pocketed his phone. Let them speculate. Let them invent whatever stories made sense to them. The truth was simpler and more complicated than they could imagine from outside his life. He went upstairs to collect Lily from Mrs. Chen, finding her covered in cookie crumbs and happily coloring at the kitchen table. "Daddy!" She jumped up, showing him a drawing of what might have been a park or possibly a spaceship. "Look what I made." "That's beautiful, baby." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in that strawberry shampoo smell that meant safety and home. "Ready to go make some grilled cheese?" They spent the afternoon in comfortable routine. Lunch, then Lily's quiet time while Evan did laundry and tried not to think about his empty future. Then an hour of coloring together at their scratched kitchen table. Lily chattered about the pigeons and the rocks and whether they could get a pet rabbit like her stuffed one, and Evan made encouraging sounds while his mind churned through possibilities. He could take the gym job. It made sense financially, professionally, practically. But it also meant exposing Lily to that world, to the reality that her father had once made his living hurting people in controlled circumstances. She was 7. How did you explain that to a 7-year-old? How did you make it sound noble instead of brutal? Around 4 o'clock, someone knocked on the apartment door. Evan checked the peephole and saw a woman in her 40s wearing a professional blazer and carrying a leather bag. She didn't look threatening, but he was cautious anyway. "Can I help you?" "Mr. Brooks? My name is Sarah Chen. Apparently everyone's named Chen today, and I'm an employment attorney. I'd like to talk to you about your termination from the Azure." "I wasn't terminated. I quit." "Actually, you were constructively discharged." She spoke through the door, her voice crisp and professional. What Camilla Voss did created a hostile work environment that would have made any reasonable person feel they had no choice but to resign. That's legally actionable, and I'd like to represent you pro bono because what happened to you represents a larger pattern of abuse that needs to be challenged. Evan opened the door a crack. "I'm not interested in suing anyone." "Why not?" "That woman assaulted you, Mr. Brooks. She humiliated you in front of witnesses. She brought your daughter into it, weaponized your personal struggles, and created a situation where you felt you had to quit your job. She should face consequences." "She's already facing consequences. Have you seen the internet? Public shaming isn't the same as legal accountability." Sarah Chen met his eyes directly. "And more importantly, there are other people, dozens of them, who've suffered similar treatment from Camilla Voss. Servers, assistants, drivers, people who couldn't defend themselves the way you did. If you sue her, you open the door for all of them to come forward. You make it safe for them to speak up." "I need to think about it." "Of course. But Mr. Brooks, you should know that Voss's legal team has already started crafting a narrative where you're the aggressor. They're going to claim she felt threatened by you, that your presence was intimidating, that she was defending herself when she did what's clearly documented on multiple videos." Evan almost laughed. "You think anyone's going to believe that?" "I think rich people with expensive lawyers can make people believe a lot of things. And I think if you don't get ahead of this, you might find yourself facing assault charges because Camilla Voss doesn't like being humiliated and has the resources to rewrite reality." That stopped him. He thought about Lily, about what would happen if he ended up in legal trouble, if child services got involved, if his daughter ended up in the system because some billionaire wanted revenge for her public embarrassment. "Give me your card. I'll call you if I decide to move forward." Sarah Chen handed him a business card, then hesitated. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Brooks? Why did you walk away from fighting? You were good, really good. You could have been champion. Because I had something more important to fight for. She smiled at that, a genuine expression that softened her professional demeanor. Your daughter's lucky to have you. Think about what I said. This isn't just about you anymore. After she left, Evan added her card to the growing collection on his kitchen counter. The reporter, the gym, the lawyer, all of them wanting something from him. All of them convinced he was part of some larger narrative he'd never intended to join. That evening, while Lily watched cartoons in the living room, Evan finally sat down and went through his phone properly. The videos from the Azure had spawned countless reaction videos, think pieces, hot takes, and social media threads. Some of them made him look like a saint. Others painted him as suspicious. Why would a trained fighter be working as a waiter? What was he hiding? Was this all staged? Camilla Voss had released a statement through her publicist. It was carefully worded, expressing regret for the misunderstanding, while maintaining she'd felt threatened and had acted in self-defense. It didn't take responsibility for anything, didn't acknowledge her behavior, and somehow made it sound like Evan had orchestrated the entire thing for attention. The comments on her statement were brutal. Nobody was buying it. The videos were too clear, the evidence too damning. She tried to hit him first, had continued attacking even when he didn't fight back, had fallen because of her own wild aggression. No amount of expensive PR could spin that into something it wasn't. But Sarah Chen was right. With enough money and the right lawyers, Camilla could still make Evan's life difficult. She could file charges, drag him through courts he couldn't afford, threaten his custody of Lily just by making him look unstable or violent. The system favored people with resources, and Evan had almost none. His phone rang again. This time it was a number he didn't recognize with a 310 area code, Los Angeles. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Brooks? My name is Jennifer Park, and I'm a talent agent with CAA. I represent actors, athletes, and influencers, and I'd love to talk to you about potential opportunities. What kind of opportunities? Well, you've become something of a phenomenon in the last 24 hours. Your story resonates with people. The single father, the hidden past, standing up to privilege and abuse. There are brands that would love to work with you, media appearances that could be very lucrative, potentially even a book deal if you wanted to tell your full story. Evan rubbed his forehead, feeling the beginning of a headache. I'm not interested in being famous. I understand that, but Mr. Brooks, you're already famous whether you want to be or not. The question is whether you're going to have any control over that narrative or just let it happen to you. If you work with me, we can be selective. Choose opportunities that align with your values. Make sure you're fairly compensated for your time and image. I need to focus on finding a job and taking care of my daughter. What if I told you that doing a few strategic interviews and partnerships could earn you more in a month than you'd make in a year serving tables? What if I told you that the right approach could set you up financially so you never have to worry about choosing between medications and rent? It was tempting. Terrifyingly tempting. Evan thought about Lily's inhaler, about the stack of medical bills, about the constant anxiety of living one emergency away from disaster. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. But Evan, can I call you Evan? Don't wait too long. This moment won't last forever. Right now, you're the story everyone's talking about. In 2 weeks, something else will catch the internet's attention, and this opportunity will be gone. After she hung up, Evan sat in his kitchen surrounded by business cards and possibilities, feeling like a man standing at a crossroads with no map and no clear idea which direction led to safety. Daddy? Lily appeared in the doorway, holding her stuffed rabbit. Are you okay? Yeah, baby, I'm okay. You look sad. Just thinking about grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. She climbed into his lap, all 70 pounds of uncomplicated love and trust. Mrs. Chen says when you're sad, you should think about things that make you happy. So I think about you and parks and grilled cheese and ice cream. Evan held her close, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing, the weight of her small body, trusting him completely to keep her safe and cared for. This was what mattered. Not the videos, not the job offers, not even the medical bills. This moment, this child, this love. You're pretty smart, you know that? Mrs. Chen says I'm the smartest girl in the building. Mrs. Chen's right. They stayed like that until Lily's breathing changed, becoming slightly more labored. Evan got her inhaler, helped her take 2 puffs, and settled her on the couch with her rabbit and a blanket while he made dinner. More grilled cheese, because it was simple and she loved it, and he needed something he could do on autopilot while his mind spun. That night, after Lily was asleep, Evan made himself review everything objectively. His situation was precarious. He had maybe 2 months of savings, no job, a viral video that would make finding normal employment difficult, and a daughter whose medical needs weren't going away. Against that, he had several offers, each carrying its own risks and possibilities. The gym job was the most stable: real work, real benefits, a return to something he knew how to do well. But it meant confronting his past, accepting that he couldn't completely escape who he'd been. The lawsuit Sarah Chen proposed was the most righteous, holding Camilla accountable, potentially helping other workers she'd abused. But it also meant months of legal proceedings, public testimony, reliving the humiliation. The media opportunities Jennifer Park described were the most lucrative: quick money, financial security, a way to leverage his 15 minutes of fame into something lasting. But it also meant becoming a public figure, exposing himself and Lily to scrutiny they'd never asked for. Or he could reject all of it, find some quiet job somewhere, let the viral moment fade, return to the anonymous struggle of making ends meet and hoping it was enough. Each option had a cost. Each one required him to give up something: privacy, peace, principles, or the past he'd worked so hard to leave behind. There was no clean choice, no obviously right path. Around midnight, unable to sleep, Evan went to check on Lily one more time. She was sprawled across her bed, her breathing steady, her face peaceful in sleep. On her shelf was the rock from the park, placed carefully beside her other treasures: a pine cone, a pretty piece of glass, a drawing she'd made of the 2 of them holding hands. Simple things. Free things. The kind of treasures you collected when you didn't have money to buy what mattered, so you found meaning in what the world offered freely. Evan thought about the man he'd been 3 years ago, the fighter who'd walked away from a championship bout because his girlfriend was 7 months pregnant and had chosen drugs over the baby they'd made together. He'd held Lily for the first time in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and broken promises, and he'd made a decision that changed everything. He'd chosen her over everything else, over fame, over money, over the only thing he'd ever been truly good at. And he'd built a life from nothing, working whatever jobs he could find, learning to be a father through trial and error, discovering that love was both simpler and more complicated than he'd ever imagined. That man, the one who'd walked away from everything to be present for his daughter, he was still here, still making choices based on what she needed, rather than what was easy or profitable or sensible by the world's standards. Evan pulled out his phone and looked at David Kim's business card. The gym was honest work. It was using his skills for something positive, teaching instead of fighting, building something instead of just surviving. It wouldn't make him rich or famous, but it would let him provide for Lily while staying true to the person he'd worked so hard to become. He sent a text before he could second-guess himself. "This is Evan Brooks. I'd like to talk about the training position. When can we meet?" The response came within minutes. "Tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock at the gym. We'll be waiting." Evan set his phone down and went to bed, feeling something like peace settle over him for the first time in 24 hours. He still didn't know what would happen with Camilla's lawyers, with the viral videos, with all the attention he'd never wanted. But he knew his next step, and sometimes that was enough. In the darkness of his room, listening to the distant sounds of the city and his daughter's breathing from the next room, Evan Brooks closed his eyes and let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would work out. Tomorrow he'd go to the gym. Tomorrow he'd start rebuilding. Tomorrow he'd prove that you could choose dignity without choosing poverty, that standing up for yourself didn't mean standing alone, that the world might be harsh and unfair, but it still had space for people who refused to be broken. Tomorrow. But tonight, he slept. Morning arrived with Lily jumping on Evan's bed at 7:30, completely oblivious to the fact that her father had barely slept. She was excited about something she'd dreamed, a rabbit that could fly, apparently, and wanted to tell him every detail while he tried to convince his brain to wake up enough to make breakfast. And then the rabbit went up, up, up into the clouds. "And I went with him, Daddy. and we could see everything from up there. We could see our building and the park and everything. That sounds amazing, baby. Evan pulled himself out of bed, his body reminding him that 34 wasn't 24 anymore, especially after a night of stress and minimal sleep. How about we get some pancakes in you before all that flying makes you hungry? They were halfway through breakfast when someone knocked on the door. Evan checked the peephole and saw Marcus from the Azures standing in the hallway, looking uncomfortable and holding what appeared to be an envelope. Evan opened the door but didn't invite him in. Marcus? Brooks. Evan. Can we talk for a minute? I'm having breakfast with my daughter. I know, and I'm sorry, but this is important. Marcus glanced past Evan into the apartment, then lowered his voice. Can we step into the hallway? Just for 2 minutes. Evan looked back at Lily, who was happily drowning her pancakes in syrup, then stepped outside, pulling the door mostly closed behind him. What do you want? Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Evan recognized from their time working together. It meant he was about to say something difficult. The owner wants to offer you your job back, double your previous salary, better shifts, guaranteed minimum hours. He wants to make this right. Why? Because the Azure is getting destroyed in the press. We've had 24 reservations canceled since yesterday. People are protesting outside. Someone threw a brick through the front window this morning with a note that said, "Eat the rich." The owner thinks if you come back, if we make a public statement about valuing our employees and treating them with respect, we can salvage the situation. Evan almost laughed. So I'm supposed to save your reputation? I know how it sounds. Marcus held up the envelope. But he's serious about making this right. This is a contract, real money, job security. And Evan, he's willing to ban Camilla Voss from the restaurant permanently. No more VIPs who think they can treat staff like garbage. We're implementing new policies, new training, the whole thing. And all I have to do is come back and pretend nothing happened. Not pretend. We'd acknowledge what happened, make it clear that we're changing, that you're part of that change. You'd be helping other servers, Evan, setting a precedent that this kind of abuse won't be tolerated. It was a good offer. Evan could see that objectively. Double his salary would mean real breathing room, enough to cover Lily's medications and start saving for emergencies. Job security meant not waking up every day wondering how long they could make it before disaster struck. But it also meant going back to a place that had let Camilla Voss terrorize him, that had only found principles after the internet forced their hand. It meant being a symbol instead of a person, trotted out whenever the Azure needed to prove they'd changed. I can't. Evan, think about this. I already have a job lined up. Thanks for the offer, but I'm done with the restaurant industry. Marcus looked genuinely disappointed, which was almost touching. Can I ask where you're going? Iron Mountain Gym. I'm going to train fighters. Understanding dawned on Marcus's face. You're going back to what you were, the ghost. That's really you, isn't it? The fighter who disappeared? That was a different person in a different life. Maybe. But Evan, the Azure's offer would be safer, more stable. Training fighters, getting back into that world. It's risky. What if it doesn't work out? Then I'll figure something else out. I always do. Evan reached for the door handle. Tell your boss I appreciate the offer, but some things aren't worth the money. He's going to offer more, whatever you need. It's not about money, Marcus. It's about dignity, about not selling yourself back to people who only valued you once you became inconvenient to ignore. You understand that? Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I do. He handed Evan the envelope anyway. Take this. Read it over. The offer's good for a week if you change your mind. After Marcus left, Evan dropped the envelope on the kitchen counter without opening it and returned to breakfast. Lily had finished her pancakes and was now building a tower out of her remaining syrup, which was absolutely not what syrup was for, but looked like it was bringing her joy. Who was that, Daddy? Someone from my old job. They wanted me to come back. Are you going back? Nope. I've got something better lined up. Better than serving fancy wine to mean people? Evan smiled. Much better than that, baby girl. The morning passed in the comfortable rhythm they'd established. Lily played while Evan cleaned up and did laundry and tried not to think too hard about the afternoon ahead. Around noon, Mrs. Chen knocked to say she'd watch Lily during his meeting at the gym, and Evan found himself grateful once again for neighbors who looked out for each other. "You nervous?" Mrs. Chen asked as she settled into their living room with a book and her knitting. "A little." "Don't be. You're good at what you do. They'd be lucky to have you." The word settled something in Evan's chest. Mrs. Chen had known him for 3 years, had watched him struggle and persevere, had seen him at his worst and never once judged. If she thought he could do this, maybe he actually could. Iron Mountain Gym was in a part of the city Evan hadn't visited in years, a neighborhood that had gentrified just enough to get expensive coffee shops, but not enough to lose its working-class character. The gym itself occupied the ground floor of an old brick building, its windows covered with posters advertising upcoming fights and training programs. Evan stood outside for a moment, watching people come and go, young fighters with gym bags, older trainers with weathered faces, teenagers who looked like they were trying to find something to believe in. This was a different world from the Azure's crystal chandeliers and marble floors, but it felt more real, more honest, more like a place where effort actually mattered. David Kim was waiting just inside the entrance, and his face broke into a genuine smile when he saw Evan. "You came. I wasn't completely sure you would." "I said I would." "You did. Come on, let me give you the tour." The gym had changed significantly since Evan's time there. The main training floor was bigger, with new equipment and better lighting. There were separate areas for different types of training, bags and speed balls, a full-size ring, matted areas for grappling and groundwork. Everything was clean and well-maintained, professional in a way that spoke to serious investment and serious commitment. "We've got about 60 active fighters now," David explained as they walked. "Range from amateurs just starting out to professionals ranked in their divisions. Plus, we've got the youth program. That's what we really need help with." "Youth program?" "Kids from the neighborhood, ages 10 to 17. We teach them boxing, discipline, respect, how to channel their energy into something productive. It's become one of our most important initiatives, but we're understaffed. Tommy handles most of it now, but he's got his own fighters to train." They passed the ring where 2 young men were sparring under the watchful eye of a trainer Evan didn't recognize. Their technique was solid but unrefined, the kind of raw talent that needed shaping and guidance. "This is Rico," David said, introducing Evan to a man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and hands that told stories of 1,000 fights. "He handles our welterweights and lightweights. Rico, this is Evan Brooks." Rico's eyes widened slightly. "The Ghost! Man, I watched your fight against Martinez 3 times. That combination in the 8th round was beautiful. Thought you were going to take the title for sure, and then you just disappeared." "Life happened," Evan said simply. "Must have been some life to walk away from a championship shot." Rico's tone wasn't judgmental, just curious. "But hey, if you're here to pass on what you know, these kids are going to learn from one of the best." They continued the tour, and everywhere they went, people recognized Evan. Some were subtle about it, just a nod or a knowing look. Others were more direct, coming up to shake his hand, tell him they'd watched his fights, ask where he'd been. Evan handled it all with polite brevity, not encouraging conversation, but not shutting people down either. Finally, David led him to a small office off the main floor. Tommy was already there, along with a woman Evan didn't know, mid-30s, athletic build, with the kind of presence that suggested she could handle herself in any situation. "Evan, this is Lisa Park. She handles our business operations and manages the youth program coordination." Lisa stood to shake his hand, her grip firm and professional. "I've been following your story since the video went viral. What you did took real courage. I just didn't hit someone who was trying to hit me. That's not courage, that's common sense. In a room full of people who could have intervened and didn't, who watched her humiliate you and did nothing, I'd call that courage." Lisa gestured to a chair. "Sit. Let's talk about what we're offering and what we need from you." The conversation that followed was refreshingly straightforward. The gym needed trainers for both their professional fighters and their youth program. The salary they offered wasn't spectacular, but it came with full health benefits, regular hours that would let Evan be home for dinner with Lily, and the opportunity to work in a field he actually understood. "The youth program is where we really need you," Lisa explained. "These kids come from tough backgrounds. Single-parent homes, poverty, neighborhoods where violence is just part of life. They need someone who understands what it means to fight, but also what it means to choose not to. Someone who can teach them that strength isn't about dominating other people. That's a lot of responsibility, Evan said carefully. It is. But from what we saw in that video, you already understand it. You could have destroyed Camilla Voss, your training, your size, your skill advantage. You could have put her on the ground with one punch. But you didn't. You controlled yourself, protected yourself, and let her defeat herself. That's exactly what these kids need to learn. Tommy leaned forward. Look, Evan, we're not asking you to be perfect or to have all the answers. We're asking you to show up, be honest about your experience, and help guide kids who need someone to believe in them. You can do that, right? Evan thought about Lily, about the kind of world he wanted her to grow up in. A world where people looked out for each other, where strength meant protection instead of domination, where walking away from a fight could be braver than winning one. Yeah, I can do that. The relief on their faces was palpable. Lisa pulled out a contract that was remarkably free of corporate jargon and impossible clauses. The terms were clear, the expectations straightforward, the compensation fair. Evan read through it carefully while they waited, looking for catches or red flags, but finding only a genuine offer from people who seemed to actually mean what they said. When would I start? Tomorrow if you want, David said. We've got 2 youth classes this week and 3 professional fighters who could use someone with your technical knowledge. Plus there's paperwork to process, facility orientation, that kind of thing. But we can be flexible around your daughter's schedule. The mention of Lily's schedule, the casual acknowledgement that he was a father first and an employee second, meant more to Evan than they probably realized. At the Azure, his parental responsibilities had been something to work around, an inconvenience to be managed. Here, they were just part of who he was. I need to arrange childcare, get some things sorted at home. Could I start Monday? Monday's perfect. Lisa made a note on her tablet. That gives us time to get everything processed and set up your training schedule. Do you have any questions for us? Evan had 1,000 questions, but most of them were about whether he could actually do this, whether he could be the person they needed him to be, and those weren't questions they could answer. What happened to the last trainer for the youth program? He got a job offer coaching at a university. We were happy for him, but it left us short-handed at a critical time. The kids are at ages where they need consistent mentorship, and we haven't been able to provide that lately. And you think I can provide it? I've never taught anyone before. I've only ever fought. You've taught your daughter, Tommy said quietly. Mrs. Chen told me about her when I asked around the neighborhood. 7 years old, health issues, but happy and well-adjusted because her father makes her the center of his world. That's teaching, Evan. That's showing someone how to live with grace even when life is hard. Evan felt something catch in his throat. He hadn't expected them to research him, to talk to his neighbors, to care about more than just his fighting credentials. Mrs. Chen talks too much. Mrs. Chen thinks you're a good man who got dealt a rough hand and is playing it better than most people would. We tend to agree. David stood, offering his hand. So what do you say? You ready to join Iron Mountain? Evan stood and shook his hand, feeling the weight of the decision settle onto his shoulders alongside something that felt almost like hope. Yeah, I'm ready. The walk back to his apartment took him past familiar landmarks. The bodega where he bought Lily's favorite snacks, the laundromat where they did their clothes every Sunday, the park where they'd been just yesterday. This was his neighborhood, his world, the life he'd built from nothing. And now, maybe, it was going to get a little easier. Mrs. Chen looked up from her knitting when Evan came to collect Lily. Well, how did it go? I got the job. Start Monday. I knew you would. She beamed at him like a proud grandmother. Lily was an angel, by the way. We played 3 games of Go Fish, and she won every single one. I think she might be cheating, but I can't prove it. Lily appeared from the kitchen with cookie crumbs on her face and complete innocence in her eyes. I'm really good at Go Fish, Daddy. Mrs. Chen says I'm a natural. I bet you are. Evan scooped her up, suddenly overwhelmed with gratitude for the small person who'd given him a reason to keep trying when everything else felt impossible. Thank Mrs. Chen for watching you. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. Anytime, sweet girl. And Evan? Mrs. Chen's expression turned serious. I'm proud of you for standing up to that awful woman, for finding a better job, for being the kind of father that little girl deserves. Your daughter is lucky to have you. The words hit deeper than Evan expected. He managed a quiet thank you before heading upstairs, Lily chattering about her Go Fish victories and asking if they could have spaghetti for dinner. That evening, while Lily colored at the kitchen table and Evan cooked pasta, his phone rang with an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Brooks, this is Detective Sarah Martinez with the City Police Department. I'd like to talk to you about an incident at the Azure restaurant. Evan's stomach dropped. What about it? Camilla Voss has filed a complaint alleging assault. I've reviewed the video evidence and witness statements, and I want to assure you that we're not pursuing charges against you. However, I do need to take your official statement for our records. Would you be available to come to the station tomorrow morning? Am I being charged with anything? No, this is purely procedural. Ms. Voss's complaint doesn't match the evidence, but we need to document everything properly. It should take about an hour. After hanging up, Evan stared at his phone, feeling the brief hope from the gym job curdle into anxiety. Camilla wasn't going to let this go. She was going to use every resource at her disposal to punish him for the sin of not breaking when she wanted him to. Daddy, you look worried again. Lily had abandoned her coloring to watch him with those too perceptive 7-year-old eyes. Just grown-up stuff, baby. Nothing for you to worry about. Is it about the mean lady from your work? Evan froze. What do you know about that? Mrs. Chen was talking to Mrs. Rodriguez, and I heard them say a mean lady was mean to you, and now everyone's mad at her. Is that true? There was no point in lying. Lily would hear things, kids at school would talk, neighbors would whisper. Better that she heard the truth from him in words she could understand. Yeah. A woman at my old job said some not nice things, and it made a lot of people upset. What did she say? She said I wasn't doing a good job, and she said things about you that weren't true. Lily's face scrunched up in confusion. About me? But she doesn't even know me. Exactly. She said things she had no business saying, and I told her to stop. And then I left that job because I don't want to work for people who let others be mean. Good. Lily nodded firmly, as if that settled everything. You're the best daddy, and anyone who says you're not is wrong and dumb. Despite everything, Evan smiled. Thanks, baby girl, but we don't call people dumb, remember? Even when they are. Especially when they are. Now come on, let's eat the spaghetti before it gets cold. They spent the evening in comfortable routine, and Evan did his best not to check his phone every 5 minutes to see if more trouble was brewing. The internet was still full of opinions about the Azure incident, some supportive, some skeptical, some just enjoying the spectacle of watching a billionaire get publicly humiliated. After Lily was asleep, Evan sat in his kitchen and called Sarah Chen, the employment lawyer. Mr. Brooks, I'm glad you called. Camilla Voss filed assault charges against me. I know. The detective handling the case called me as a courtesy. Don't worry, the charges won't stick. There's too much video evidence showing she was the aggressor. But she's still trying. Of course she is. Powerful people don't like being made to look weak. But Evan, this actually works in our favor if you're willing to pursue a lawsuit. It shows a pattern of retaliation, of using the legal system to intimidate someone who stood up to her. I don't want to spend the next year of my life in courts. You wouldn't have to. Cases like this usually settle out of court once the defendant realizes they can't win. Camilla Voss's lawyers will see the evidence, recognize that a trial would be a public relations disaster, and recommend settlement. We could probably resolve this in a few months. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you document everything. You go to the police station tomorrow and give your statement, and you let me handle the legal strategy. I've dealt with people like Voss before. They're used to people backing down when they throw money and lawyers at problems. But you're not backing down, are you? Evan thought about Lily asleep in the next room, about the job at Iron Mountain, about every person who'd ever been abused by someone with more power and more money, and the absolute certainty that consequences were for other people. No, I'm not backing down. Good. Then let's make sure Camilla Voss learns that money can't buy immunity from basic human decency. The next morning, Evan dropped Lily off at school and headed to the police station. Detective Martinez was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who seemed genuinely annoyed that she had to waste time on what she clearly considered a frivolous complaint. For the record, Mr. Brooks, I've watched that video about 20 times from different angles. You showed remarkable restraint in a situation where most people would have at least shoved her away. The fact that you're the one being investigated is a testament to how broken the system is when it comes to wealthy defendants. So why are we doing this? Because technically, she filed a complaint, and technically, I have to investigate. But between you and me, this case is dead on arrival. The district attorney won't touch it, and if Voss's lawyers have any sense, they'll tell her to drop it before it backfires even worse. Evan gave his statement, describing the evening in careful detail. What Camilla had said, how she'd escalated, the way she'd initiated physical contact and continued attacking even when he didn't respond in kind. Detective Martinez took notes, asked clarifying questions, and seemed satisfied by the time they were done. One more thing, Mr. Brooks. Have you been contacted by any media wanting to interview you? Several. I haven't responded. That's probably wise. This is still an active investigation, even if it's going nowhere. But once we close this out, you might want to consider telling your story publicly. There are a lot of service workers out there dealing with similar abuse who need to know they're not alone. I'll think about it. He was leaving the station when he ran into someone he hadn't expected to see, Rachel, one of Camilla's companions from the night at the Azure. She looked different in daylight, less polished, more human. Mr. Brooks, I'm glad I caught you. I've got nothing to say to anyone from Camilla's circle. I'm not in her circle anymore. I resigned from her investment fund yesterday. Rachel glanced around, then lowered her voice. I wanted to apologize for not intervening that night. I should have stopped her earlier, should have done something. But I was afraid of losing my position, and I let that fear make me complicit in her behavior. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to hear it, and because I want you to know that you're not the first person she's done this to. I've watched her destroy servers, assistants, drivers, anyone she perceived as beneath her. It was easier to look away, to pretend it wasn't that bad, to tell myself it wasn't my problem. And now? Now I realize I was part of the problem. So I've given a statement to your lawyer about everything I've witnessed over the past 2 years working with Camilla. The pattern of abuse, the deliberate humiliation, the times she's gotten people fired or blacklisted for imagined slights. It's all documented. Evan studied her face, looking for deception or manipulation, but found only genuine remorse. That must have cost you. It did. My career in high-end finance is probably over, but I can live with that. I couldn't live with staying silent anymore. She handed him a business card. If your lawyer needs anything else from me, have her call. And Mr. Brooks, thank you for showing me what integrity actually looks like. She walked away before Evan could respond, leaving him standing on the police station steps, wondering how many people's lives had been changed by a single video and a refusal to back down. His phone buzzed with a text from David Kim. Kids class at 4 p.m. today, if you want to observe. No pressure, just thought you might like to see what you're getting into. Evan checked the time. It was barely noon, which gave him time to grab lunch, check on Lily at school, and get to the gym. He texted back, I'll be there. The Iron Mountain youth class was nothing like Evan expected. He'd imagined maybe a dozen kids learning basic boxing technique, but instead found 30 teenagers of various sizes and skill levels, all listening intently while Tommy demonstrated proper defensive posture. The first rule of fighting, Tommy was saying, is knowing when not to fight. The second rule is protecting yourself. The third rule is never, ever using your skills to bully or intimidate people weaker than you. Break that rule and you're out of this gym permanently. Everyone understand? A chorus of yes, sir, echoed through the space. Evan watched from the sidelines as Tommy put them through their paces. Basic combinations, footwork drills, partner work that emphasize control over power. These kids weren't here to become professionals. They were here to find discipline, community, a way to channel their energy into something productive. One kid in particular caught Evan's attention, a lanky 15-year-old with reflexes that suggested natural talent, but technique that needed serious work. He was fast, but his punches were wild, uncontrolled, the kind of form that would get him hurt in a real match. After class, Evan approached Tommy. The tall kid in the blue shirt, what's his story? Marcus? Good kid. Tough home situation. His mom works 2 jobs. Dad's not in the picture. He's got potential, but no discipline. Wants to solve everything with his fists instead of his head. Mind if I work with him? Tommy's face broke into a grin. Not even officially started yet and already jumping in. Yeah, man. He could use someone like you. Evan approached Marcus as he was packing up his gear. Hey, I'm Evan. I'll be training here starting Monday. Marcus looked up, and Evan saw the instant recognition in his eyes. You're that guy, from the video, the ghost. I'm just Evan. And I noticed you've got good speed, but you're telegraphing your punches. You want some help with that? The kid's eagerness was almost painful to watch. Really? You'd train me? If you're willing to listen and work hard, I don't waste time on people who aren't serious. I'm serious. I swear I'm serious. They spent the next hour working on basic technique, and Evan found himself falling into teaching more naturally than he'd expected. Marcus was a quick learner once someone explained not just what to do, but why, and by the end of the session, his punches were noticeably more controlled. This is amazing, Marcus said, his face flushed with exertion and excitement. Nobody's ever broken it down like that before. That's what I'm here for. But Marcus, you need to understand something. The skills you're learning aren't for starting fights. They're for ending them quickly when you have no other choice, or better yet, for walking away confident that you could handle yourself if you needed to. Like you did with that rich lady. Exactly like that. She wanted me to hit her, wanted to make me the bad guy. I didn't give her that satisfaction. Marcus nodded slowly, processing. My friends say I should fight this kid who's been talking trash about me, but I don't want to. Does that make me weak? No, that makes you smart. Fighting someone over words is what weak people do because they need external validation. Strong people know their worth and don't need to prove it to idiots. The kid smiled, a genuine expression that made him look younger than his 15 years. Thanks, coach. I'll see you Monday. After Marcus left, Evan found himself alone in the gym, surrounded by equipment and memories and the ghost of who he used to be. He walked over to the ring, running his hand along the ropes, feeling the familiar texture that had once been such a central part of his identity. He wasn't that person anymore. The ghost who'd fought for championships and glory was gone, replaced by someone quieter, but maybe stronger. A father, a teacher, a man who'd learned that the hardest fights were the ones you walked away from. His phone rang. It was Sarah Chen, the lawyer. Good news, Evan. Camilla Voss's legal team just reached out about a settlement. They're offering a substantial sum in exchange for you signing an NDA and dropping any potential claims. How substantial? $250,000. The number hit Evan like a physical blow. $250,000. Enough to cover Lily's medications for years. Enough to move to a better apartment, maybe even buy a small house. Enough to stop worrying about money every single day. What's the catch? The NDA is strict. You couldn't talk about what happened, couldn't give interviews, couldn't participate in any media coverage of the incident. Essentially, you'd have to disappear from the public conversation about Camilla Voss. And if I don't take it? Then we proceed with the lawsuit, which could take months and might result in more money or might result in nothing if a jury doesn't see it our way. It's a gamble, Evan. This is a sure thing. Evan stood in the empty gym, thinking about certainty versus principles, security versus integrity, the easy path versus the right one. $250,000 to be silent about abuse, to let Camilla Voss buy her way out of consequences, to send the message that money could erase anything if you had enough of it. No. Evan, think about this carefully. I have. The answer is no. We proceed with the lawsuit. Sarah Chen was quiet for a moment. Can I ask why? This is a lot of money to turn down. Because there are other people like me who need to know they can stand up without being silenced. Because my daughter needs to learn that some things matter more than money. Because Camilla Voss needs to understand that she can't buy her way out of basic human decency. All right then. Sarah's voice warmed with something like respect. Let's show her what happens when she picks on someone who won't stay down. After hanging up, Evan sat on the edge of the ring, letting the enormity of what he'd just turned down wash over him. $250,000. Financial security. Peace of mind. Gone. But in its place was something he couldn't quite name. A sense of rightness, of having chosen integrity over expedience, of being the kind of man he wanted Lily to be proud of. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen. "Lily's asking if you'll be home for dinner. I told her yes. Was I right?" Evan smiled and texted back. "You were right. Making spaghetti, her favorite." He locked up the gym and headed home through streets that felt more familiar and more foreign than they ever had before. Everything was changing: his job, his public profile, the trajectory of his entire life. But some things stayed constant. Lily waiting for him at home, spaghetti on the stove, the simple promise that he would always choose being her father over anything else the world offered. That was enough. That had always been enough. And tomorrow, when he started teaching kids like Marcus how to fight, and when not to, he'd prove that being enough was actually everything. The weekend passed in a strange limbo between Evan's old life and whatever was coming next. He spent Saturday cleaning the apartment while Lily helped by creating more mess than she eliminated. Her version of dusting involving mostly redistributing dust to different surfaces while humming tunelessly. Sunday brought laundry and grocery shopping and the ordinary domestic tasks that grounded Evan when everything else felt like it was spinning out of control. But his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. More reporters wanting interviews, more lawyers offering representation, more strangers with opinions about his life and choices. He'd stopped reading the comments online after finding a particularly vicious thread speculating about why a professional fighter had really quit. The theories ranged from drug addiction to gambling debts to criminal connections, each one more creative and less accurate than the last. "Daddy, you keep looking at your phone with your mad face," Lily observed on Sunday evening while they made grilled cheese for dinner. "Do I have a mad face?" "Yeah, it's like this." She scrunched up her features into an exaggerated scowl that made Evan laugh despite himself. "That's not what I look like." "It totally is. Mrs. Chen says phones are why everyone's always mad now. She says people used to just talk to each other and be happy." "Mrs. Chen might be onto something." Evan put his phone face down on the counter. "How about we have a no-phone dinner? Just you and me talking about important stuff." "Like what?" "Like what you want to be when you grow up." Lily considered this seriously while cheese melted on the griddle. "I think maybe a veterinarian or an astronaut or someone who makes ice cream for a living." "Those are all excellent choices." "What did you want to be when you were little, Daddy?" The question caught Evan off guard. He couldn't remember the last time someone had asked him about childhood dreams rather than adult mistakes. "I wanted to be a superhero." "Like with a cape and powers?" "Something like that. Someone who could protect people and make things better." "Did you become one?" Evan looked at his daughter, 7 years old, chronic health issues, completely dependent on him for everything from medications to meals to the basic security that tomorrow would be okay. He thought about the choices he'd made, the life he'd built, the way he'd given up everything else to make sure she was safe and loved. "I became something better. I became your dad." Lily beamed at him with the uncomplicated joy of a child who didn't yet understand how rare it was to be someone's whole world. "That's the best superhero job." They ate dinner without phones or television, just talking about nothing and everything, and for those 40 minutes, Evan felt like maybe he'd actually figured something out about what mattered. The rest of the world could argue about viral videos and billionaire accountability and the symbolic meaning of his actions. Here in this small kitchen with melted cheese and a chattering 7-year-old, he knew exactly who he was and what he was fighting for. Monday morning arrived with Lily's alarm clock blaring and a scramble to get her ready for school. Evan packed her lunch, helped her find her other shoe, reminded her 3 times to brush her teeth, and walked her to the bus stop while mentally preparing for his first official day at Iron Mountain Gym. "Are you excited about your new job?" Lily asked as they waited for the school bus. "Yeah, baby. I think I am." "Are you going to teach people how to punch things?" "Sort of. I'm going to teach them how to be strong and safe." "That's good. Everyone should be strong and safe." The bus pulled up and Lily hugged him tight before climbing aboard. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Lily girl." He watched the bus pull away, feeling the familiar anxiety of sending his child out into a world he couldn't completely control, then headed to Iron Mountain with a gym bag he'd dug out of storage and a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. David Kim met him at the entrance with coffee and a genuine smile. "First day, how you feeling?" Like I'm about to find out if I actually know how to teach or just got lucky with one kid on Friday. You'll be fine. Come on, let's get you set up. The morning was a blur of paperwork, facility orientation, introductions to staff members whose names Evan immediately forgot, and a walkthrough of the training schedules. He'd be working with the youth program 3 afternoons a week and helping train professional fighters on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. The pay was exactly what they'd promised. The benefits kicked in after 30 days, and everyone he met seemed genuinely happy he was there. Your first class is at 4, Lisa Park explained as she showed him the equipment storage. 15 kids, ages 13 to 16. They've been without consistent coaching for about a month, so they're going to test you. Expect attitude. Expect questions. Expect them to push boundaries to see if you'll push back. What do I do when they push? Be firm but fair. These kids have usually had enough authority figures who are just cruel or just pushovers. They need someone who sets boundaries because they care, not because they're on a power trip. At 3:30, Evan changed into training gear and entered the youth section of the gym. A handful of kids were already there, some working bags, others just hanging out and talking. They glanced at him with the particular wariness teenagers reserved for new adults in their space. Marcus was among them, and his face lit up when he saw Evan. "Coach, you're really here." "Said I would be, didn't I?" "Yeah, but adults say a lot of things." Marcus's tone was matter-of-fact rather than bitter, just stating an observed truth. "This is Coach Brooks, guys. He used to be a professional fighter, the Ghost." Several kids pulled out phones, presumably looking him up, while others just stared with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. One girl with purple streaks in her hair and the kind of defensive posture that screamed trouble at home spoke up. "You're that guy from the video, the one who let that rich lady hit him." "I didn't let her hit me. I defended myself without hitting back. There's a difference." "Sounds like letting her hit you to me. What's your name?" "Destiny." "Okay, Destiny, come here." Evan gestured to the mat. "I want you to try to hit me." She looked suspicious. "For real?" "For real. Take your best shot. I'm not going to hit you back, but I'm also not going to let you hit me. Let's see if you can tell the difference." The other kids formed a circle, sensing entertainment. Destiny approached the mat with exaggerated confidence, and Evan could see she'd been in fights before. Street fights, probably. The kind where technique mattered less than aggression and willingness to hurt. She swung at him, a wide haymaker with her full weight behind it. Evan sidestepped easily, and her fist whooshed through empty air. She tried again, faster this time, and Evan caught her wrist mid-punch, stopping her momentum completely. "See? You didn't hit me, but I also didn't hurt you. That's control. That's real strength." "Whatever." But Destiny was smiling slightly, impressed despite herself. "Do that again." They spent the next 10 minutes with Evan demonstrating defensive techniques while various kids tried to land a hit. None of them could. He moved like water, redirecting their energy, staying balanced, making it look effortless in a way that clearly wasn't. Finally, a stocky kid named Jerome crossed his arms. "Okay, but what if someone comes at you who actually knows how to fight? What if they're bigger and stronger and not just some spoiled rich lady?" "Good question. Marcus, get up here." Marcus joined him on the mat, looking nervous. Evan handed him protective headgear and light gloves. "Put these on. I'm going to show everyone what happens when someone who knows what they're doing comes at me. Marcus, I want you to actually try to hit me. Use what I taught you Friday. Don't hold back." "You sure?" "Positive. Show them what you've got." What followed was a demonstration that had every kid in the gym watching with complete focus. Marcus was good, better than Evan had realized, and with proper technique, his strikes were fast and precise. But Evan was better. He slipped punches with minimal movement, blocked without losing position, and twice gently countered in ways that would have ended real fights, but here just demonstrated complete technical superiority. After 2 minutes, Evan called a stop. Marcus was breathing hard but grinning. "Man, you're fast." "I'm experienced. That's different. And Marcus, that was excellent work. You've been practicing what I showed you." The pride on the kid's face was almost painful to witness, like he wasn't used to adults noticing his effort, let alone praising it. Evan addressed the whole group. "Here's what I need you to understand. Fighting isn't about being tough. It's not about dominating people or proving you're stronger. Fighting is a last resort for when every other option has failed. What I'm going to teach you is how to protect yourself, how to stay calm under pressure, and most importantly, how to recognize which battles are worth fighting and which ones you walk away from. But what if you can't walk away? This from a quiet kid in the back named David. What if someone's coming at you and you've got nowhere to go? Then you defend yourself efficiently and end it quickly without causing more harm than necessary. But that's maybe 2% of situations. The other 98%, you can walk away, de-escalate, or find another solution. The trick is being confident enough in your abilities that you don't need to prove them. They worked for the next hour on basic defensive techniques: how to stand, how to protect your center, how to see attacks coming before they landed. Evan moved through the group offering corrections and encouragement, and he found himself falling into a teaching rhythm that felt natural, like he'd been doing this for years instead of minutes. Destiny struggled with keeping her hands up, dropping her guard whenever she got tired. Why does it matter? If someone's going to hit me, they're going to hit me. It matters because protecting yourself matters. You matter. Your safety matters. Every time you drop your guard, you're telling yourself you're not worth protecting, and that's not true. She looked at him with something vulnerable flickering in her eyes before the defensive wall came back up. You don't know anything about me. You're right, but I know you showed up here, which means some part of you wants to be stronger, safer, better. So let's work on keeping that guard up. By the end of class, Evan was exhausted in a way he hadn't been since his fighting days. Not just physically tired, but emotionally depleted from the sheer intensity of trying to reach 15 different kids with 15 different backgrounds and issues. But it was good exhaustion, the kind that came from doing something meaningful. After the kids cleared out, Tommy appeared with 2 bottles of water and a knowing grin. So, how was it? Harder than fighting professionally. Yep, but also more important. You did good, man. I was watching from the office. Those kids were actually listening to you, which is more than they've done for anyone in weeks. They're good kids. Just need someone to see that. That's what we're counting on you for. Tommy's expression turned more serious. Look, I should tell you, there's been some media hanging around outside. Reporters trying to get comments from people leaving the gym, asking about you. David told them to leave or he'd call the cops, but they might try to approach you when you leave. Evan's good mood dimmed slightly. I was hoping that would die down. Brother, you turned down a $250,000 settlement to pursue a lawsuit against one of the richest women in the city. That's not dying down anytime soon. That's just getting started. True to Tommy's warning, there were 3 reporters waiting outside when Evan left the gym. He kept his head down and his mouth shut, pushing past microphones and questions. How does it feel to be back in a gym? Are you planning to fight again? What do you want to say to Camilla Voss? He didn't answer any of them, just got to his car and drove away, checking his mirror to make sure no one followed. The last thing he needed was reporters figuring out where he lived and camping outside his apartment building where Lily might see them. His phone rang as he was driving, Sarah Chen, the lawyer. Evan, we need to talk about discovery. Camilla's legal team has submitted their response to our complaint, and it's creative. What does that mean? It means they're claiming you have a history of violence and aggression, that your professional fighting career demonstrates a pattern of behavior, and that Camilla was reasonably afraid for her safety given your background. Evan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. That's insane. I never fought outside the ring. My record is clean. I know, but they're going to try to paint your entire career as evidence of dangerous tendencies. They've also subpoenaed your employment records from the Azure, claiming the restaurant had concerns about your temper. Marcus would never say that. He won't have to. They'll find some incident report someone filed, some customer complaint, something they can twist into a narrative. This is what expensive lawyers do, Evan. They create doubt. So what do? We counter with our own discovery. I've already subpoenaed records from every restaurant and business Camilla has frequented in the past 5 years. We're going to find every server she's abused, every assistant she's fired unjustly, every pattern of behavior that shows she's the problem, not you. But I need you to be prepared for this to get ugly. How ugly? They're going to dig into everything. Your past relationships, your finances, your daughter's mother. They're going to try to find anything they can use to make you look unstable or untrustworthy. And Evan, they're going to go after Lily. The hell they are. Evan's voice went cold and flat. Not directly. But they'll question your fitness as a parent, suggest that your financial struggles put her at risk, imply that your lifestyle choices endanger her well-being. It's character assassination, and it's legal. So I'm supposed to just let them attack my parenting? No, you're supposed to let me defend you while you focus on being exactly who you've always been, a good father doing his best. The judge will see through their tactics, but only if you don't give them real ammunition by losing your temper or doing anything they can point to as proof of their claims. After hanging up, Evan sat in his parked car outside his apartment building, trying to process the fact that wanting accountability for being assaulted now meant having every aspect of his life scrutinized by hostile lawyers with unlimited resources. His phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. "This is Rachel, Camilla's former colleague. I wanted to warn you. She's not taking the settlement rejection well. She's telling people you're trying to extort her, that you planned the whole incident for publicity. Just thought you should know what narrative she's pushing." Evan texted back, "Thanks for the warning." Another message appeared. "Also, 6 more people have contacted your lawyer about their experiences with Camilla. Former employees, service workers, people she's abused over the years. You standing up gave them courage to come forward. Whatever happens with the lawsuit, you've already made a difference." That helped. Not much, but enough to get him out of the car and into his building, where Mrs. Chen was waiting with Lily in the lobby. "Daddy!" Lily ran to him, full of energy and stories about her day. "We learned about the solar system, and I got to be Neptune in the play we're doing, and Mrs. Rodriguez says Neptune is the best planet because it's blue and far away and mysterious." Evan scooped her up despite her getting too big for it, breathing in that strawberry shampoo smell that meant everything was okay. "Neptune is definitely mysterious. Did you have a good day?" "The best day. And Mrs. Chen made me a snack and helped me with my homework, so we're all done and can play now." "Sounds perfect. Let's go upstairs and you can tell me all about Neptune." That evening passed in the comfortable routine of dinner and homework review and bath time negotiations. Lily chattered endlessly about school and friends and the injustice of having to go to bed when there was still so much playing to do. It was normal and mundane and exactly what Evan needed after a day of teaching teenagers and dodging reporters and learning that his life was about to be dissected by hostile lawyers. After Lily was asleep, Evan sat at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee and looked at the growing pile of business cards and documents related to the lawsuit. Sarah Chen had sent over a preliminary discovery request, pages and pages of questions about his employment history, his fighting career, his personal life, his relationship with Lily's mother. That last one made his chest tight. Lily's mother, Maya, had been a mistake in human form, beautiful and charismatic and completely incapable of choosing anything over her next high. She'd disappeared when Lily was 6 months old, leaving nothing but a note saying she couldn't do this anymore and a trail of unpaid bills. Evan had sole custody, but the thought of lawyers dragging Maya's addiction into court, making it part of some narrative about his judgment and choices, made him feel sick. His phone buzzed. Marcus Chen, the reporter from the Tribune. "Mr. Brooks, I know you haven't wanted to talk, but I wanted to give you a heads up. I'm running a story tomorrow about Camilla Voss's history of abusing service workers. I've interviewed 8 people who've worked for her or served her over the years. Your incident isn't isolated, it's part of a pattern. I thought you should know before it publishes." "Why tell me?" "Professional courtesy, and because I think you deserve to know that what you went through matters, that it's helping other people feel safe enough to speak up. The story will be online at 6 a.m. if you want to read it." After he hung up, Evan thought about those 8 people, strangers who'd had their own encounters with Camilla's cruelty, their own moments of humiliation, their own reasons for staying silent until someone else went first. He'd become that someone else without meaning to, just by refusing to stay down when someone with power tried to break him. That night, sleep came slowly. Evan lay in bed listening to the sounds of the building settling, sirens in the distance, the ordinary symphony of city life continuing regardless of personal drama. He thought about the kids in his class that afternoon, Destiny with her defensive walls, Marcus with his eager hunger for guidance, Jerome with his legitimate questions about what to do when walking away wasn't an option. He thought about Lily sleeping peacefully down the hall, unaware that her father's choices were creating ripples that might eventually touch her life. He wondered if he was being selfish, pursuing this lawsuit when settling would have given them financial security and anonymity. But then he thought about what he'd tell Lily when she was older, when she asked why he'd walked away from the Azure, why he'd stood up to Camilla Voss, why he'd chosen the hard path when an easier one existed. He wanted to tell her that some things mattered more than money or comfort, that standing up for yourself and others was worth the cost, that being able to look yourself in the mirror mattered more than being able to afford a bigger apartment. He wanted to be the kind of father who lived his values instead of just talking about them. And that meant seeing this through, regardless of where it led. Tuesday morning, Evan woke to 43 missed calls and over 100 new text messages. Marcus Chen's article had published, and it had gone viral. The headline read, "A Pattern of Abuse. 8 workers describe years of mistreatment by billionaire investor Camilla Voss." The article was devastating. Server after server describing similar incidents, public humiliation, invented complaints, deliberate cruelty designed to make them feel small. A personal assistant who'd been fired for wearing the wrong shade of blue. A driver who'd been screamed at for hitting a red light. A sommelier who'd been blacklisted for suggesting a wine pairing. And at the center of it all was the video of Evan, calm and controlled, while Camilla tried repeatedly to break him. The contrast between his restraint and her rage had become the visual representation of everything wrong with unchecked wealth and power. By the time Evan got Lily to school and himself to the gym, the story had spawned 1,000 think pieces about class warfare, toxic wealth culture, and the service industry's silent suffering. Hashtag Eat the Rich was trending. Labor activists were using Evan's image in their campaigns. Someone had started a GoFundMe to help with his legal fees that had already raised $30,000. David found him staring at his phone in disbelief. "You okay?" "I don't know. This is all happening so fast." "You started something important, Evan. People needed someone to stand up first. You did that. I just didn't want to hit someone who was hitting me. That's not heroic. That's basic human decency." In a world where billionaires face zero consequences for their actions, yeah, that's actually pretty heroic. David squeezed his shoulder. "Use it. Let the attention put pressure on Camilla's legal team. Let it show other workers they're not alone. You didn't ask for this platform, but you've got it now. Might as well make it count for something." That afternoon's youth class was subdued. The kids had clearly seen the news, and they looked at Evan differently now, not just as a coach, but as someone who'd actually done the thing they all claimed they'd do if given the chance. Destiny approached him before class started. "My mom read that article. She said you're doing what she wishes she could do every time some rich lady treats her like garbage at her cleaning job." "Your mom's a house cleaner?" 3 different houses, 6 days a week. She comes home exhausted, and people still treat her like she's nobody. Destiny's voice was fierce with protective anger. "I'm glad you're making that Voss lady pay. She deserves it." "I'm not trying to make her pay. I'm trying to make sure she faces consequences so it doesn't happen to someone else." "Same thing, isn't it?" "Not really. One's about revenge. The other's about justice. There's a difference." They worked through combinations and defensive positioning, and Evan found himself thinking about Destiny's mother, cleaning rich people's houses while they probably barely acknowledged her existence. How many people like her were there? How many invisible workers keeping the machinery of wealth running while being treated as less than human? After class, as Evan was packing up his gear, his phone rang with a number he recognized. Jennifer Park, the talent agent from CAA. "Evan, I know you weren't interested before, but circumstances have changed. You're not just viral now, you're a movement. And I've got offers that could set you up for life." "What kind of offers?" "Book deals, speaking engagements, a documentary crew that wants to follow your story, brand partnerships with companies that want to align themselves with your values. We're talking 7 figures minimum if you play this right." 7 figures. Enough to never worry about money again, to give Lily everything she needed and most of what she wanted, to build the kind of stability Evan had only dreamed about. "What would I have to do?" "Be yourself. Tell your story. Let people see the man behind the video. You're already doing the work, teaching kids, pursuing justice, being a good father. We just help you share that with a wider audience and get compensated fairly for it." I need to think about it. Of course. But Evan, opportunities like this don't wait around forever. The internet's attention span is measured in days, not months. If you want to capitalize on this moment, you need to move soon. After she hung up, Evan sat alone in the gym's empty training room, surrounded by equipment and possibilities, and the weight of decisions that would shape not just his future, but Lily's. Every choice came with consequences he couldn't fully predict. Every path led somewhere he'd never been before. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen. Judge granted our discovery request. We'll have access to all of Camilla's business communications and employee records for the past 5 years. Her lawyers are going to fight this hard, but we're winning. Don't lose faith. Another text, this one from Marcus Chen. Article generated 847 complaints to the labor board about Voss's companies. 3 advertisers pulled support from her investment fund. You're making a real difference. And finally, a text from Mrs. Chen. Lily had a good day at school. She told her class her daddy teaches kids to be strong. She's very proud of you. As am I. Evan closed his eyes, letting the exhaustion and uncertainty and fragile hope wash over him in equal measure. He didn't know if he was making the right choices. He didn't know if the lawsuit would succeed, or the media attention would help or hurt, or the teaching position would last. But he knew that tonight he'd go home to Lily, make her dinner, help with her homework, and tuck her into bed with stories and kisses. And tomorrow he'd do it again. And the day after that. Everything else was just details around that central truth. He was her father, and that was the only job that really mattered. The rest of the world could argue about billionaires and justice and symbolic resistance. Here in this gym, teaching kids like Destiny and Marcus how to be strong without being cruel, Evan Brooks was exactly where he needed to be. And that, finally, felt like enough. 3 weeks into his new life at Iron Mountain, Evan had fallen into a rhythm that felt almost sustainable. Morning routines with Lily, afternoon classes with the youth program, evening sessions with professional fighters who treated him with a respect he was still getting used to. The media attention hadn't died down exactly, but it had shifted from frantic to steady, a constant background hum rather than a deafening roar. The lawsuit was progressing in the slow, grinding way legal proceedings always did. Sarah Chen sent weekly updates about depositions and discovery responses and procedural motions that meant something to lawyers but felt abstract to Evan. What felt real was the growing list of former Camilla Voss employees willing to testify about their own experiences with her cruelty. What felt real was the message he'd received from a server in Chicago who'd stood up to an abusive customer and kept his job because the restaurant owner had seen Evan's video and decided enough was enough. What felt real was Marcus showing up to every single class early, his technique improving so dramatically that other kids had started asking him for help, watching him transform from an angry kid with fast hands into a young man learning that discipline mattered more than rage. It was a Thursday evening, and Evan was working with one of the gym's professional fighters, a welterweight named Andre, who had a title shot coming up in 6 weeks. They were drilling defensive sequences when David appeared in the doorway with an expression that immediately put Evan on alert. "We need to talk. Office. Now." Andre caught Evan's eye. "Everything okay, coach?" "Yeah, keep working that slip and counter combination. I'll be back in a few minutes." But Evan knew from David's face that this wasn't a few minutes conversation. In the office, he found David, Tommy, and Lisa all looking grim. "What happened?" Lisa pulled up something on her tablet and turned it to face him. It was a news article from a gossip website, the kind that traded in scandal and destruction. The headline read, "The Ghost's Dark Secret, Child Services Investigation into Viral Heroes Parenting." Evan's blood went cold. "What is this?" "Camilla's team leaked false information to the press." Sarah Chen's voice came through the speakerphone on the desk. Apparently they'd already called her. "They're claiming there was a child services investigation into your fitness as a parent last year. It's completely fabricated, but the story's already spreading." How can they just lie? They buried it in speculation, and sources say language that gives them legal cover. And by the time we get it retracted, the damage is done. People will remember the accusation, not the correction. Evan's hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against the desk, trying to find the calm that had kept him steady through everything else. "What do I do?" "We fight back," Sarah said firmly. I'm already drafting a defamation suit to add to the existing complaint. And Evan, this actually helps us in a way. It shows how desperate they are, how willing to destroy you rather than face accountability. A judge will see that. But people believe this stuff. What if Lily hears about it at school? What if actual child services shows up because of a fake allegation? I've already contacted child services, Lisa said quietly. Explained the situation, provided documentation of the smear campaign. They've noted it in their files as harassment. If anyone calls in a complaint, they'll know it's retaliation, not legitimate concern. David leaned forward. Evan, I know this is scary, but you've got people in your corner now. This Jim, your lawyer, the community you've built here. Camilla Voss is used to isolating her targets. She's not used to people fighting back with support systems. I need to go home. I need to check on Lily. Go. Tommy was already grabbing his coat. I'll cover your evening session. Take care of your kid. That's what matters. The drive home felt like it took hours, even though it was only 15 minutes. Evan's mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Reporters at the apartment, Lily crying because kids at school had said mean things, child services actually showing up despite Lisa's reassurances. But when he got home, he found Lily exactly where she was supposed to be, at Mrs. Chen's apartment, doing homework at the kitchen table while Mrs. Chen made dinner. Daddy! Lily looked up with a smile that hadn't been touched by the poison spreading online. You're home early? Finished up my sessions early. Thought we could have dinner together, just the two of us. Mrs. Chen met his eyes over Lily's head, and her expression said she'd seen the news. She mouthed later, and then spoke aloud. What perfect timing. I was just about to send this one home anyway. Lily, go pack up your things. After Lily ran to gather her backpack and jacket, Mrs. Chen pulled Evan aside. I saw the article. It's garbage, and anyone who knows you knows it's garbage. But people who don't know me will believe what they want to believe regardless of facts. Focus on the people who matter. Your daughter, the kids you're teaching, the folks in this building who've watched you be a good father for 3 years. The rest is just noise. Evan wanted to believe that. He made dinner with Lily, her choice, so naturally it involved pasta and entirely too much cheese, and listened to her talk about a science project and a disagreement with her friend Sophie and whether rabbits or guinea pigs made better pets. Definitely rabbits, Lily declared with 7-year-old certainty. They're bigger and fluffier and probably better at adventures. Can't argue with that logic. After dinner, while Lily watched her allotted 30 minutes of television, Evan checked his phone. The fake child services story had spawned exactly the kind of internet wildfire he'd feared. Half the comments were people defending him. The other half were people ready to believe the worst, and in the middle were reasonable people saying they'd wait for more information before forming opinions. His phone rang. Jennifer Park, the talent agent. Evan, I know the timing is terrible, but I need you to listen. I can get you on 3 major talk shows tomorrow if you're willing. Let you tell your side of the story directly. Show people who you really are. Humanize yourself before the narrative gets away from you. I have classes to teach tomorrow. Classes can be rescheduled. This is your reputation, your livelihood, your daughter's well-being. You need to control this story. By going on television and defending myself against lies? By showing people the truth. Evan, you're good on your feet, you're honest, you're sympathetic. Let America see the real you, the single dad, the dedicated teacher, the man who walked away from money to stand up for what's right. That's powerful. Evan looked at Lily, completely absorbed in her cartoon, innocent and safe, and unaware of the battle being waged over her father's character. I need to think about it. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, the opportunity's gone and the narrative hardens without your input. That night, after Lily was asleep, Evan sat in his kitchen with a cup of coffee and Marcus Chen's business card. The reporter had said he wanted to write a deeper story, something beyond the viral moment. Maybe now was the time. He dialed the number. Mr. Brooks, I was hoping you'd call. You said you wanted to write about my story, the real story. Does that offer still stand? Absolutely. When can we meet? Tomorrow afternoon. But I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this for publicity or sympathy. I'm doing it because my daughter might someday read these articles, and I want her to see the truth, not whatever twisted version Camilla's lawyers are selling. I understand. And Evan? I'll do right by you. You have my word. They met the next day at a quiet coffee shop while Lily was at school. Marcus brought a recorder and a notebook, but mostly he just listened while Evan talked about his fighting career, about Maya's addiction and disappearance, about the choice to walk away from a championship shot to be present for his daughter, about the grinding poverty of trying to raise a child on a server's wages, about the night at the Azure and everything that came after. Why didn't you take the settlement? Marcus asked. $250,000 would have solved a lot of problems. Because it would have solved my problems while making it easier for Camilla to keep creating the same problems for other people. Because I want my daughter to learn that some things matter more than money. Because I was tired of being silent. Do you regret it? Especially now with the smear campaign? Evan thought about that honestly. Sometimes. Late at night when I'm worried about paying bills or scared about what's coming next. But in the daylight, when I'm teaching kids like Marcus and Destiny, when I'm making Lily breakfast and helping with homework, when I'm being the person I want to be instead of the person circumstances tried to make me, no, I don't regret it. The interview lasted 2 hours. Marcus asked tough questions about his relationship with Maya, about his fighting career, about his finances, about whether he was equipped to be the symbol people wanted him to be. I'm not a symbol, Evan said finally. I'm just a dad trying to take care of his kid and do right by people who needed someone to go first. If that inspires others, great. But I'm not some perfect hero. I'm just doing my best. Your best seems to be pretty good, Marcus said as he packed up his recorder. The article will run Sunday. I'll send you an advance copy Saturday night if you want to review it. I trust you. That means a lot. And Evan, for what it's worth, I think you're exactly the kind of father that kid of yours deserves. That evening, Sarah Chen called with news. Camilla's lawyers want to meet. They're calling it a settlement negotiation, but I think it's more than that. They're feeling the pressure. What kind of pressure? 3 of her major investors pulled out this week. Her company's stock is down 18%. The Labor Board has opened formal investigations into 4 of her businesses, and we've got 17 former employees willing to testify about her pattern of abuse. She's losing the war and she knows it. So what do they want? To make this go away quietly. But Evan, we're in a strong position now. We don't have to settle for quiet. We can demand real accountability. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at a law office downtown that probably cost more per hour than Evan made in a month. Sarah coached him beforehand on what to expect, what to say, what not to agree to without consulting her first. Remember, they're going to try to intimidate you. Big conference room, expensive suits, legal language designed to make you feel small. Don't let them. You've got the moral high ground and the evidence. They need this more than you do. Camilla's legal team consisted of 4 lawyers in suits that cost more than Evan's car, led by a woman named Patricia Holloway, who had the kind of polished aggression that suggested she'd built her career on destroying people in depositions. Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming. Her handshake was brief and impersonal. Let's get right to it. My client is willing to make a substantial settlement offer in exchange for your agreement to drop all claims and sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. How substantial? Sarah asked. $500,000 plus coverage of all legal fees incurred to date. In exchange, Mr. Brooks agrees never to discuss the incident publicly, retracts any previous statements suggesting wrongdoing by Ms. Voss, and acknowledges that the physical altercation was the result of mutual misunderstanding. Evan almost laughed. Mutual misunderstanding? She attacked me on video from 6 different angles. My client's position is that she felt threatened by your presence and physical demeanor and reacted in self-defense to what she perceived as an aggressive confrontation. I never touched her until she tried to hit me. Your interpretation. The video can be read multiple ways. Patricia slid a document across the table. This is our offer. It's generous, Mr. Brooks. More money than you'll likely see in 10 years of teaching at that gym. Enough to secure your daughter's future, ensure her medical needs are met without constant financial stress. All you have to do is walk away. Sarah leaned forward. And accept a narrative that blames the victim, protects the aggressor, and ensures Ms. Voss faces no meaningful consequences for her behavior. That's not a settlement. That's a cover-up. It's a business transaction. Mr. Brooks pursued this lawsuit seeking compensation for damages. We're offering compensation. If he's unwilling to accept it, one has to question whether his true motivations are financial or merely vindictive. My motivations, Evan said quietly, are making sure what happened to me doesn't happen to someone else who doesn't have videos to prove their innocence or a lawyer willing to take their case. Very noble, but nobility doesn't pay for your daughter's medications. Patricia's voice was cold, clinical. Let me be frank, Mr. Brooks. If you proceed with this lawsuit, we will bury you in discovery. We will depose every person you've ever worked with, every teacher at your daughter's school, every neighbor in your building. We will examine every aspect of your life looking for evidence that you're an unfit parent, a violent person, a man whose judgment cannot be trusted. You mean you'll lie and hope something sticks? We mean we'll investigate thoroughly and let a jury decide. And juries, Mr. Brooks, are unpredictable. You might win. You might get nothing. You might spend 2 years in litigation only to discover that your viral fame doesn't translate to legal victory. Is that really a risk worth taking when we're offering guaranteed money right now? Sarah put her hand on Evan's arm, a silent reminder to stay calm. We'll need to discuss this with our client. Of course, you have 48 hours. After that, the offer drops to $250,000, and we proceed with aggressive litigation. Your choice. Outside the law office, standing in afternoon sunlight that felt cleaner than the air-conditioned conference room, Sarah turned to Evan. $500,000 is a lot of money. I know. But they're scared. You said it yourself. We're in a strong position. They wouldn't be offering this much if they thought they could win. True, but Evan, they're not bluffing about making your life hell. They will dig into everything. They will try to destroy you. Are you prepared for that? Evan thought about Lily, about the kids at Iron Mountain, about all the servers and assistants and invisible workers who needed to know that standing up didn't always end in destruction. Yeah, I'm prepared. Then we counteroffer. $1 million, a public apology from Camilla Voss, and mandatory anti-harassment training for all her employees. No NDA. You get to tell your story however you want. They'll never agree to that. Probably not. But it sets the terms for negotiation. Let them know we're serious, that you're not desperate, that money alone won't make this disappear. The counteroffer went over exactly as expected. Patricia Holloway called it unreasonable and vindictive, accused Evan of using the legal system for personal revenge, and promised that Camilla would never agree to any settlement that included a public apology. Then we'll see you in court, Sarah said pleasantly, and hung up. The next 2 weeks were a blur of depositions and document reviews in preparation for trial. Evan gave testimony about the night at the Azure, about his employment history, about his relationship with Lily. Camilla's lawyers were exactly as aggressive as promised, but Sarah had prepared him well, and he stayed calm through questions designed to make him lose his temper. Meanwhile, Marcus Chen's article published a long-form piece titled "The Ghost's Second Fight: How One Father's Stand Against Privilege Became a Movement." It was fair and thorough, painting Evan not as a perfect hero, but as a flawed human being trying to do right by his daughter while navigating systems designed to favor wealth over justice. The response was overwhelming. The article went viral in a different way than the original video, deeper, more thoughtful, sparking conversations about class, power, parenting, and the courage it took to stand up when staying silent would be easier. 3 days after it published, Patricia Holloway called Sarah with a new offer. $750,000. Public statement acknowledging that the incident was regrettable, though without admitting fault. Anti-harassment training. Limited NDA that allows Mr. Brooks to discuss his general experience but not specific details about Ms. Voss. We want $1 million and a full apology. My client will never apologize. That's non-negotiable. Then we'll let a jury decide. There was a long pause. $900,000. Final offer. Statement of regret. Training. NDA with significant carve-outs for Mr. Brooks's ability to speak about workplace abuse generally. Take it or leave it. Sarah looked at Evan. They were in her office, the offer on speakerphone between them. $900,000. Enough to change everything. What about the other workers? Evan asked. The ones who came forward. Do they get anything? Another pause. That's not part of this settlement. Make it part. Acknowledge their experiences, create a fund for former employees who suffered similar treatment. Then we'll talk. Mr. Brooks, you're not in a position to— Actually, we are, Sarah interrupted smoothly. You need this to go away more than we need the money. So here's our final counter. $900,000 to Mr. Brooks, $250,000 to a fund for documented former employees who experienced harassment, public statement expressing regret and commitment to better workplace culture, comprehensive anti-harassment training, and an NDA that allows my client to speak freely about his experience and workplace abuse generally. Accept it by 5 p.m. tomorrow, or we'll see you in trial. She hung up before they could respond. That was a power move, Evan said. That was calling their bluff. They'll accept. Camilla Voss doesn't want to sit in a courtroom while 17 people testify about what a monster she is. Her ego can't handle it. Sarah was right. The acceptance came at 4:45 the next day, with minor language modifications that didn't change the substance. The settlement was real. Evan had won. The news broke that evening. Not the details. The NDA prevented that. But the fact that Evan Brooks and Camilla Voss had reached a settlement agreement that included compensation and commitments to improved workplace policies. The internet exploded with reactions. Some people accused Evan of selling out, taking money instead of seeing it through to trial. Others celebrated it as a victory, showing that accountability was possible even against the ultra-wealthy. Most people just seemed relieved that a regular person had stood up to a billionaire and come out ahead. Evan didn't read the comments. He was busy making dinner with Lily, who was completely oblivious to the fact that their lives had just changed in ways she wouldn't understand for years. "Daddy, can we get a rabbit now?" she asked while setting the table. "Why do you want a rabbit?" "Because they're fluffy and nice and I could teach it tricks." "We'll see, baby. Maybe start with keeping your room clean and we'll talk about rabbits." "That's what you always say when the answer is no." "That's because I'm a dad, and that's what dads say." She giggled and went back to setting out napkins while Evan stirred pasta sauce and tried to process what the settlement meant. The money would be held in trust until the final paperwork was signed, but it was real. Enough to cover Lily's medical expenses for years. Enough for a down payment on a real house with a yard where a rabbit could live if she kept asking. Enough to stop choosing between necessities. But more than the money, there was the fund for other workers, the anti-harassment training, the public acknowledgement that something had been wrong. It wasn't everything. Camilla hadn't apologized directly, hadn't admitted fault, but it was something. It was more than nothing. That weekend, Evan took Lily to the park like he'd promised weeks ago. They fed ducks and played on swings and had ice cream for lunch because sometimes rules were meant to be bent. She was delighted with the freedom, completely unaware that her father's fight against a billionaire had finally reached its conclusion. On Monday, Evan returned to Iron Mountain for his regular classes. The kids were waiting, and Destiny approached him immediately. "Coach, we heard you won, that you made the rich lady pay." "I didn't make her pay. We reached an agreement that holds her accountable and helps other workers she hurt." "Same thing," Marcus said, grinning. "You didn't back down. You won." The real win is what you all are learning here: how to be strong without being cruel. How to stand up for yourselves without losing control. That matters more than any settlement. They worked through their drills, and Evan felt the comfortable rhythm of teaching settling over him like a familiar coat. This was his life now, not viral videos or legal battles or media attention, but this gym, these kids, the daily work of being present and engaged and useful. After class, David pulled him aside. "So, what are you going to do with the money?" "Take care of Lily, buy a house probably, save for her college, the boring, responsible stuff." "You could do anything. Travel, invest, start your own gym." "I could, but I like it here. I like teaching kids who need someone to believe in them. I like being part of something bigger than myself. Why would I leave that?" David smiled, the kind of smile that suggested he'd been hoping for exactly that answer. "Good, because we'd like to make you a partner in the gym. Full ownership stake, voice in decisions, part of building something that lasts. You've proven yourself these past weeks. The kids respect you, the fighters trust you, and you show up every day ready to do the work. That's worth more than money." "I don't have capital to invest." You've got something better. You've got credibility and commitment and the ability to reach kids that no one else can. Think about it. No pressure, but the offer stands. That evening, Evan sat with Lily while she did homework, helping her with math problems and spelling words while his mind processed everything that had changed. A month ago, he'd been a waiter drowning in medical bills, invisible to everyone except the people demanding better service. Now he had financial security, a partnership offer, a community of people who valued his presence, and a daughter who thought he was the best dad in the world, even though he still burned grilled cheese sometimes and couldn't. French braid her hair properly. "Daddy, you're smiling," Lily observed. "What's funny?" "Nothing's funny. I'm just happy." "Because of your new job?" "Because of you. Because we're okay. Because tomorrow we get to do this all over again." "That's kind of boring to be happy about." "Boring is underrated, baby girl. You'll understand when you're older." The settlement finalized 2 weeks later with signatures and legal documents that meant Evan's bank account suddenly had more zeros than he'd ever imagined. He paid off all outstanding medical bills, put money aside for Lily's future, and made a down payment on a small house 3 blocks from their current apartment. Close enough that Lily could keep her school and friends, big enough that she could finally have that rabbit she kept asking about. He accepted David's partnership offer, becoming part owner of Iron Mountain Gym with a focus on expanding the youth program to serve more kids from difficult backgrounds. The work was demanding, but it felt right in a way that serving wine to indifferent millionaires never had. Marcus Chen's follow-up article about the settlement focused not on the money, but on the precedent, that regular people could hold powerful abusers accountable, that the system could work if you had the courage to push back and the support to sustain the fight. It became required reading in several labor rights courses at universities, used as a case study in standing up to workplace abuse. Camilla Voss largely disappeared from public life. Her investment fund downsized significantly. Several of her business ventures collapsed under the weight of public scrutiny and investor withdrawal. She never apologized, never acknowledged wrongdoing, but her power had been checked in a way that mattered. 6 months after that night at the Azure, Evan stood in the backyard of his new house watching Lily play with her rabbit, a fluffy gray creature named Neptune that she'd trained to hop through a small obstacle course she'd built from cardboard boxes. The evening sun was warm, the grass was green, and from inside the house he could hear Mrs. Chen helping herself to coffee while complaining cheerfully about the neighbors. His phone buzzed with a message from Destiny. "Coach, I got accepted to the Youth Boxing Nationals. Thank you for believing I was worth teaching." Another message from Marcus. "Mom got a new job with better pay and they treat her with respect. She says it's because she learned from my coach that standing up for yourself matters. Thank you." Evan put his phone away and watched his daughter teach a rabbit to jump through hoops, her laughter carrying on the breeze, her breathing clear and easy in the warm air. This was success. Not the money or the headlines or the moral victory over Camilla Voss, but this moment right here. A happy kid, a peaceful evening, the absolute certainty that tomorrow would bring more of the same. "Daddy, look! Neptune jumped through 3 hoops in a row." "That's amazing, baby. You're an excellent teacher. I learned from you. You teach people to be strong and good and stand up for themselves." Evan walked over to where she sat in the grass, her small hands gentle on the rabbit's soft fur, her face bright with uncomplicated joy. He knelt beside her, this child who'd given him a reason to be better than he ever thought he could be. "You know what I learned, Lily?" "What?" "That being strong isn't about fighting or winning or proving you're tougher than someone else. It's about knowing who you are, what you stand for, and refusing to let anyone make you into something less. You taught me that just by being you." She looked at him with 7-year-old wisdom that somehow understood more than she should. "Is that why you didn't hit that mean lady? Because you knew who you were?" "Exactly. I knew I was your dad first, and everything else second. That made all the other choices easy." "I'm glad you're my dad." "I'm glad I'm your dad too, baby girl. Best job I ever had." They sat together in the grass while Neptune explored his new yard and the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in the city, people were still arguing about class warfare and billionaire accountability and the meaning of Evan's stand against Camilla Voss. Somewhere, workers were finding courage to speak up against abuse because someone had gone first and survived. But here, in this small backyard with this small person and this smaller rabbit, Evan Brooks had everything that mattered. He'd fought the fight that needed fighting, not with his fists, but with his refusal to be broken. He'd won not because he was stronger or smarter or luckier, but because he'd known what he was fighting for and refused to compromise on it. The ghost had found peace. The fighter had become a teacher. The desperate waiter drowning in bills had become a homeowner and gym partner and father who could finally breathe without calculating the cost of every breath. And in the end, that was the real victory. Not defeating Camilla Voss or winning a settlement or becoming viral famous, but building a life where a 7-year-old could play with her rabbit in her own backyard while her father watched with the quiet certainty that tomorrow would be just as good, and the day after that, and all the days beyond. Come on, Lily, let's get Neptune settled in his hutch and make some dinner. Can we have spaghetti? We can have anything you want. Then spaghetti with lots of cheese and maybe ice cream after? Maybe ice cream after, Evan agreed, standing and offering his hand to help her up. If you eat all your vegetables. That's what you always say. That's because I'm consistent, one of my better qualities. They walked inside together, leaving Neptune to explore his new home while evening settled over the neighborhood. Tomorrow, Evan would go back to the gym and teach kids how to channel their strength into something positive. Tomorrow, he'd take Lily to school and pick her up after and help with homework and make dinner and tuck her into bed with stories. Tomorrow would be ordinary and wonderful and exactly what he'd fought so hard to build. But tonight, he made spaghetti with too much cheese and let Lily have ice cream even though she'd only eaten half her vegetables, because some rules existed to be broken and some moments deserved celebrating. The ghost had finally found his home. And it turned out home wasn't a place or a championship or a bank account balance. Home was a kid with spaghetti sauce on her face, a rabbit named after a planet, a gym full of teenagers learning to be strong without being cruel, and the simple peace that came from knowing you'd stood up when it mattered and refused to be anything less than who you wanted to be. Evan Brooks had chosen dignity over security, principle over money, fatherhood over everything else. And in the end, he'd gotten all of it. Not because the universe rewarded virtue, but because standing up for yourself created opportunities that staying silent never could. He was home. Finally, completely, peacefully home. And that was victory enough for any fighter.